What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Variant the Podcast. I am Arris Quinones with Tim Connolly.
What's going on, Variant Nation? Arris, how you doing, buddy?
I am good, Tim. The time has come.
The time has finally arrived. My God.
Time is here. The Snyder Cut is out and in the world.
And as I've been saying for weeks, we've finally seen the freaking movie.
We finally saw it. Yes, we did. We both watched it today, actually.
That's
We're
right.
a few hours, fresh right off of it.
That's right.
Watched it a few hours ago.
Yep.
Dude, it is long.
There's a lot to talk about.
There's a lot to talk about. Yes,
Lot
it
to
is.
talk about.
You know me, I always like, because I feel like I bring it up a lot, but I always like to know the actual runtime, because they'll say the movie's 4 hours and 2 minutes, but that counts credits, you know?
Right.
The movie's actually, if just actual content, 3 hours and 54 minutes if you're not counting credits.
Yep.
But that's 4 hours.
Yeah.
It is 6 minutes shy of actual content. That is insane.
He wasn't playing around. This was a giant meet the ball.
Dude, it was. Well, I watched it late.
Yes,
so
you did. Yeah.
I didn't think I was going to be able to make it through the whole thing. I'm like, 4 hour movie. I'm like, this is why I haven't watched the extended cuts of Lord of the Rings. That's that's a long freaking time. Now, given I like DC and superheroes more than Lord of the Rings, but still, I'm like, 4 hours is a long time. That's a commitment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where once I started watching, I'm like, oh, I can't turn this off now. I have to see it through.
Right?
It's here for the taking. Although it was, I will say to their credit, I believe it was broken up into 6 parts where every 40 minutes or so, it'll be part 1, you know what I mean? Like A Father Twice, or part 2, you know what I mean? They broke it up in that. So you can watch it in episodes if you wanted to.
Yeah, you can break it into, basically, I believe the first 2 hours is 4 parts. And then the last 2 hours is 2 parts. So it does break into segments, but once you get going, it is hard to stop and move on. But that was I think a sign of a well-made movie, right? Is you wanted to see it for 4 hours. It's kind of like. That was one of the big questions going in was, is this really going to be able to keep our attention for 4 hours? And the answer was yes.
Yeah, I guess we should just get into initial thoughts before we start
let's really get into we'll get into the meat because there's a lot to say.
Yes, we have 4 hours. Yes, there is. Obviously, spoilers, everyone. If you haven't watched this 4 hour epic, spoilers. We're going to spoil the crap out of it.
Yeah.
So that's your warning.
Whatever Zack Snyder didn't already spoil, yeah.
With that said, my initial thoughts, I really liked the movie. I didn't know going in. I was like, yeah, we'll see. I mean, from this last year and a half, 2 years, I've been kind of in the middle. I'm like, it could be good. It could just be a little different. You know what I mean?
Right.
But man, I feel like it's kind of dumb saying it aloud because it's exactly what it is. But it's literally the same movie, but not at all.
That is a great way to put it. It is the same movie, but not at all.
Right. And I feel like that's very obvious, but I think when people who have seen it know exactly what we're saying here when I say that, right? Where you get a lot. I don't even, well, I guess you could say a lot. I think I told you earlier briefly when we were just kind of, we wanted to save most of it for, here recording the podcast, but I told you, I was like, to me, from my perspective, if I remember correctly, it felt like only 30 to 40% of the same shots were used in this Snyder Cut, and even when they were used, they were extended or shortened and completely different. Do you know what I mean? There was several scenes from the Whedon cut that weren't in this movie at all. I would say half of that movie wasn't in this movie. You know what I mean?
I don't think it was half. It was, but there were definitely scenes that were removed.
I mean, because there was, it's weird because the first Batman scene, the opening scene for the movie, right? In the Whedon's cut, the whole Batman rooftop scene, that's not in here at all.
Yeah,
that's off the bat. But and then you know what it is? It's just so much of it was added and different because even the Wonder Woman fight scene in the Whedon cut. This was so much longer. That scene was so much longer in this movie to the point where even the terrorists walking up to the bank, just the angles of it, the shots he chose instead of Whedon. The fight was way more elaborate and longer. You know what I mean? So it just I would love to know the actual percentage, but from a first viewing, first thoughts, just seeing the movie once from what I can remember, I felt this was 70% a new movie. Just from visual shots alone.
Well, we know it was at least 50%, right? Because it was twice as long.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, look, the reality is this was the first movie, because there's just so much to say. This was by far the better film, obviously, right?
Infinitely better,
this
right.
was, and the question is, what happened, right? That's the big question. We were talking about it just very briefly before we started recording. What happened here, right? And that's the thing I think that we'll get into more as we go along in the conversation here. But this was by leaps and bounds, light years, the better film. It gave us the more full, coherent view of Snyder's big picture vision that he set out on with Man of Steel and then BVS and then ultimately the Justice League, right? They shot this huge epic of a film. 4 hours long was his cut. Warner Brothers knew that this was his rough cut before he stepped away from the film to be with his family and so forth during the tragic loss of his daughter. Well, it was actually after she passed, but to be with his family and all of that, they knew that this was his cut of the film already, and they were not happy with it. They wanted him to cut it down, right? We were all familiar with the story at this point. It's been going on for years, right?
Yes.
But
2017, I believe.
Yeah, before 2017, because 2017 is when we actually got the Justice League. So
yeah.
This was going on in 2016
when all the drama happened behind the scenes. Right.
So we had, we're all familiar with the story at this point. But the question is with this movie, Zack Snyder's cut of the film being this much better of a film, you're left going, how did this happen? How did this happen? With this movie, we got the full view of Snyder's picture. It filled in all the enormous gaps and question marks left by the 2017 version, Whedon's version of this film, right? Which now we understand, and I think what most of us are going to feel is like, oh man, there's all this stuff. And really all it was this was a movie that was much, much, much bigger in scope than what we saw in 2017. And they gutted so much of the story of this film that it just left it coherent. And the pieces they added to be able to make it even remotely coherent for the 2017 version of the film weren't good additions to the overall film. They were these just kind of like random, non-helpful, and really it aided in making it feel like that Frankenstein patchwork of a film, right? Where it's like this piece didn't feel like it fit well with this piece, but they were somehow together. So that's what we were left with. And the bottom line is like, and we're going to talk about all of this stuff, but for me, it was like, it's not so much about whether or not, what scenes of Whedon's were missing as much as the big overall scope of this was you can clearly see why 2017's Justice League was such a Frankenstein's monster of a film now, because his original version, what they were working with, was such a bigger story. There was so much more to it that had to be explained. And when you gutted all of that out, it just left the movie feeling like an incoherent mess.
Well, that was one of the biggest pluses for me with this movie, because like you said, the first movie, as a lot of people call it, a Frankenstein's monster of a movie, is the fact that this character, the Snyder Cut finally, what I think it did best at, or one of the things it did best at, was we finally got to see every character have their arc, right?
Right, exactly.
Like especially Cyborg. Snyder's been saying it for a long time, but he really was like the heart of the movie, right? Like he was sure. Like our like way into this world with like the whole human struggling thing and stuff like that, the loss he was dealing with, and he was really the one who at the end of the day, because of his power set, was able to freaking stop Darkseid, right? With the help of obviously the other members of the Justice League, but it was like, he's the guy who controls the super machines. There's a super machine that needs controlling, so he's the dude, right?
Right.
So it was really, really fascinating, like you said, to see like, wow, it's crazy how much more Snyder intended to flesh out these characters than what we saw, and everyone, right? Like the first hour of the film, is pretty much like dedicated to Wonder Woman and Themyscira, right? What deals with all that, how the Steppenwolf steals the mother box from them, and it's intertwined with some Batman finding Aquaman and stuff. That's literally the opening scene in the movie and stuff. But for the most part, it's dealing with Themyscira, right? And then you get like you see Aquaman being flushed out, talking to Valko, who's in this movie, who he wasn't in Whedon's cut and stuff like that. You see more scenes with him and Mara that explain what's going on there, and it actually that opened up, like you said, big picture DCEU. That opened up a lot.
Yeah, and Mara, who apparently was supposed to have a British accent, as it turns out.
Everyone's calling that out on the internet. But what was really cool is that explained, because this obviously was before Aquaman, and it explained a lot of things that we saw come to fruition in Aquaman. Yep. And we didn't see that in the Whedon cut. And the same could be said, for every character, the Flash, Batman, obviously. You saw a lot more. See, that was my main complaint with you with the Whedon cut, or one of my main complaints, where I was like, I think I said it to you the moment we left the theater, seeing it. I'm like, so wait a minute. Batman hated Superman, literally the last movie, but all of a sudden is like, oh my God, he's the best guy in the whole wide world. We need to bring him back.
Right.
Like the way they did it so quickly annoyed me. But in this movie, I'm like, oh, where he literally has a line where he says, I promised to him on his grave. Like, you saw the slow burn of the realization after his death that he was wrong. And he's like, oh, we do need him. Like, again, he fleshed it out a lot more. It explained it. I'm like, see? This now I'll accept it. Now I'm like, okay, now I get it. And you hated him last movie, but now you're telling me why he likes him this movie. Where in the Whedon's cut, I'm like, what? You literally tried to kill him, dude. You know what I mean? And now you're mad that Doomsday did it instead of you.
Right.
But a lot of stuff like that was just so well explained, and it just made it. I think there's lots of reasons to like this version, but kind of going off of what you were saying, I think one of the biggest reasons, just from a storytelling aspect, is it's coherent.
Right.
Like, you understand every character's motivation, you see their arc, you know what I mean? Everything comes full circle, and it's just an actual full circle written story from beginning to end. Like, it makes sense. Like, it seems so basic, but so often films and stories and stuff don't, where it's like, it is actually a big thing where it's like, oh yeah, no, this actually was a good thought out story. Like, you can clearly tell that he has a vision, and it ends where we're going somewhere else. Like, he knows where this is going.
Right.
He clearly, because we say it all the time on here, whether we're talking about comic books, TV, movies, where it's like, any story, before you go into it, you need to have a beginning, middle, and end. You need to know where you're starting, where you're going to end up in the middle, and where it's going to come full circle. And Snyder clearly has a vision of what, every piece of that, where he started with Man of Steel and where he wants the end with. I think now it's inevitable before we get a Justice League 2. So where it's going to end with a Justice League 2.
That is for me the biggest thing. After all of this, after seeing the entirety of this film, right? Even though the vast majority of it was spoiled by Zack Snyder before we got to see it, and I do
That's
mean
one of my
vast
gripes.
majority of it. All of my worries on that front were proven true. The vast majority, at least 95% of everything we saw in the film that was new, was spoiled before we got to see it.
Especially the Martian Manhunter one.
Yeah, everything
was such a bummer for me, because I'm like, oh man, if I didn't know that.
And there was no Green Lantern. There was no Green Lantern introduced.
There was a Green Lantern
at the beginning, but we saw that in the first Justice League too.
Briefly, yes.
We saw Green Lanterns fighting, even though this was a much more elongated and expositional version of that scene. That was way, way better. But we'll get into that in a second. But
Yalin Gore, if you will, or Gur.
But my point is that, even with all of that being true and most of the film being spoiled, having now seen the entirety of the film, I feel like this film is one of I'm talking about the overarching story of the making of this film, the two different versions, etc. I think that it's an epic tragedy, right? It is one of the greatest tragic events / vindications in all of filmmaking history, in my opinion. And I know that it's a superhero film, and a lot of movie snobs might argue with that. I don't care, because this is so much better of a film than what we got in 2017. And it's so much more, it's not perfect. A lot of the issues that, we've had it with previous Snyderverse films, we're still present and so forth. But this is by far, I think, the best of the films that he's made for DC.
Oh, easily.
And it's the best. It's the most well-rounded film that he's made. It elaborated and it fleshed out every single one of the Justice League's characters. It took time on each character, right, to tell us a little bit about who they are and how they fit in to the Justice League and this universe as a whole. Leading up, it would have made so much more sense and helped us along the journey of being introduced to Wonder Woman as she got her own film, Aquaman as he got his own film, The Flash as he gets his own film, and so on, right? There's so many different elements to this that we lost and are just now getting after the fact, after we already knew all of the beats and all of the, the spoilers and a lot of it, again, granted, I'm going to give Snyder a lot of the stuff he told us and leaked. He did so out of kind of a sense of loss, right? For him never having gotten the ability to tell his full story and him not thinking he was going to get to. So a lot of the leaks and a lot of the spoilers came prior to him knowing he was actually going to get to show this. So I'll give him that. A lot of it, he did it. He leaked after the fact. So that part I can't give him, but, and now I fully understand why he was so upset, and not just him, why all of the creators that were involved in this film, from the actors, from the producers and the directors to the writers, the actors, even what's the word I'm looking for? The composer. Thank you. The composer, Junkie XL, right?
Or Junkie XL, yep.
And all these people who were willing to come back on and put time and effort in for reduced dollars and all this kind of thing to see it through at the end, because this was so different than what was presented to the world in 2017. No wonder it left a bad taste in all their mouth. And at this point, I'm left feeling like if they don't let him finish this at this point, you are going to just be lumping insult on top of injury, right? This was clearly the better film. And the only reason that this did not get made, and I think everybody's going to fully understand that now, the only reason that this was not released to the world and that we didn't get this version of the film in the first place is because of ego and certain people's desire to part ways with Zack Snyder and the Snyderverse back in 2016. That's it. This was all ego driven and just bad business moves.
Yeah, it's a weird thing too, because obviously, on that front, it's going to be speculation because we were never working with them around them.
There is literally no way that anyone could make the argument that they looked at what they that patchwork that they put together with Whedon and be like, yeah, this is the better film.
Oh, for sure. What I'm trying to say is I'm wondering if they were so concerned because it's really weird because I don't even know if they were so concerned with even because obviously there was backlash when we got the Whedon cut, right? Everyone was like, why did you do this? Yada, yada, yada. So I'm wondering behind the scenes, were they no, because of the backlash from BVS, because that film was very, very polarized, right? Not obviously like the Justice League, but it was still there was a pretty down the middle even split where you either loved it or you didn't. You know what I mean? There was really no in the middle with most people. So because of that, I wonder if they got cold feet. They're like, no, we got to be MCU. We got to be Marvel. You know what I mean? We need that lighter humor, which to me makes sense because that's what they tried to do with Whedon's cut of the Justice League, right?
Sure.
So maybe they were like, sure, this is your vision, Scott. This is awesome for 4 hours, whatever. But this isn't going to sell tickets. We need that humor, that lighthearted, and literally we're going to bring freaking Whedon, the guy who did the first 2 Avenger movies, literally bringing Mr. Marvel himself over to us to give us that version for DC characters.
Yeah, but so again, that for me though, that is all ego. That's my point.
Right. They're doing it for money, for sure.
Exactly. And that's my point, is that this was all driven by ego, by suits who thought that they knew better. They're the money. And that, we want this to go in a different direction. We're not liking the feel of it. So we're going to come in. and we're gonna fix it. We're gonna fix it because he's made a mess of it. And look, you're not going to get me to side with Zack Snyder on BVS. BVS had major problems. Even the director's cut of the film. People try to argue, oh, no, you got to watch the director's cut. No, I'm sorry, it did not fix the problems. It just added more scenes. The BVS had lots and lots of problems. And maybe behind the scenes, even some of those problems was due to Warner Brothers stepping in and trying to put their fingerprint on it, and it wasn't exactly his vision.
I was just going to bring that up.
It's very possible, especially after what we're seeing with Justice League. But no matter how you slice it, if I'm an executive producer, if I'm an executive at Warner Brothers Studios, and I'm looking at this full, complete cut of the film, that even at 4 hours, that Zack Snyder has already filmed, had a rough cut, right? They already had most of the score done. This was done. This was on its way to being a complete film. They just had to finish the visual effects and some of the, the post-production elements of it. And instead, they chose to spend another, 70, 80, $100 million to bring in Whedon and shoot extra scenes and gut the film down to a 2-hour Frankenstein that was clearly nowhere near as good as the original film that Zack Snyder already had shot and finished. They chose to spend more money to make a worse film. That is purely ego by people who just thought they knew better and, we'll come in and we'll just do this thing. But then they proceeded to continue to use the same actors like, what's her, man, I'm terrible with names when I'm on a roll.
Gal Gadot?
Gal Gadot, and with Aquaman. And they continue to use those actors and do this hybrid Snyderverse / not Snyderverse, right? Oh no, we're going to do our version of it, right? And those things went on to be successful, so they thought they were vindicated. But it didn't change anything. All it did was now they put this out, and people are going to go, well, no, that's the better version of Justice League that explains so many things. Even with Aquaman, right? When at the very beginning, when we see Aquaman, and it's right after he has his interaction with Bruce Wayne, and we see him dive down, and he goes to Atlantis, and we see him standing before the dead version of his father, that holding the Triton that we see in the first Aquaman film. But in the first Aquaman film, he had never seen that before. So that's a change.
I thought the same exact thing.
Exactly.
But
they changed it.
But I believe that scene was just like a statue of his father, while the one in the Aquaman movie was down deep into the trench and actually his father. You know what I mean? Like that wasn't like what we saw in the Snyderverse, in the Snyder Cut, wasn't what he saw. It was just a statue of his father. You know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say?
It's possible, but in the Aquaman film, if I'm remembering correctly, and again, it's been a minute since I've seen it, in the Aquaman film, that's exactly what it looked like. When he got to that, it was, and remember, he had to become worthy, and then the Triton revealed itself to him.
It did look very similar. So I don't know if it's a continuity error or if it's just like a statue.
Well, I don't think they felt like it was a continuity error. I think they had to explain it again because they took it out of the Justice League film. So they had to reintroduce that in the story in a coherent way. And
in a different place, though, right?
In a different place,
change the location. Yeah. If it's that, I guess.
Yeah.
That's a nice question to ask. Let's get him on. Let's get Snyder on the phone.
Yeah, get Snyder on the phone. But either way, the point is that Snyder's version of Arthur Curry and Aquaman was, I felt, now having seen it, was a better version of introducing of that character's overall arc, his motivations of where he was, and some of it is very similar, but it's just that gradual evolution of the character from film to film prior leading into Aquaman that I think would have impacted Aquaman as a movie in an even better way, where you could have still kept it more lighthearted, but it would have been able to carry over some of that momentum from the Justice League in a way that was very, very different than what we got.
Well, it's what the MCU does so well, right? The character development from movie to movie. It's basically what this was, because with 4 hours,
exactly,
you clearly didn't have to rush anything at all. So we got to see that, that evolution of them Batman gathering them, seeing where they're coming from, where they're at in their life, ultimately to like why they're joining the team and what they're bringing to the team. You know what I mean?
And you do have to like remember, and this is something we've talked about many times, is that Zack Snyder was being asked from the very beginning to catch up on at that time was about 7 years of Marvel story development, right? He was being asked to basically bring DC up to, to match where Marvel was in like 3 films. He was being asked to introduce all these characters and roll all these stories out and introduce these characters and flesh them out and have the Justice League introduced and have like this big grandiose story, overarching universe wide story arc going with Darkseid in half the time, essentially, that Marvel did it. And so, of course, you're going to get longer films. Of course, you're going to because you have to be able to flesh the characters out. These are massive characters with decades worth of comic book storylines, and they're deep, meaningful characters to these huge fan bases. You got to take at least a little bit of time to roll these things out and introduce them and show who they are and all these kinds of things. And so now, having seen the film, and I know without question that you'll agree that you watched the 4-hour film and you were like, well, yeah, this is why it was 4 hours.
For sure. But it's also one of those things that proved to me, like I said from the beginning, that while I would have rathered to each character get their own solo movie and then ultimately that end in a group movie, much like what Marvel did, because that just kind of makes sense. That's how you tell stories, you introduce characters, and then once you know all the characters, you bring them together in a team, right? While I would have much rather DC to go that route, it still was very possible for DC to do the flip of that. And I think this movie proved it. If this would have been what we've got off the bat in 2017, the Snyderverse, no question, would be in full swing right now. We would have had Justice League 2 by now. None of this like ambiguity between with the Aquaman film. Like, should we mention the Superman's here? Should we not show Henry Cavill's face at the end of Shazam because we don't know if he's still Superman? Like all that, it all would have just seemed intertwined perfectly. It would have been normal. We would have seen Henry Cavill's face at the end of Shazam. Right. All that stuff. So it's kind of. It's like really disappointing in that sense, right? Where it's like given, like you said earlier, like just because, I really enjoyed the Snyder Cut doesn't fix everything else that happened, right? Like Suicide Squad, still not a great movie, right? BVS, still very polarizing. I say it all the time, overall, I don't think it's a great movie, but there is pieces in it that I really like, but still I wouldn't, say it's one of the best superhero movies ever made in my personal opinion. Right. So there's still issues, but I think this showed that they had a bright future now that all the teams, the characters are acquainted with one another, and they had a really cool vision of where this is going to go, especially with this Nightmare universe that he created, which is one of the biggest aspects. Yeah. Like this movie ends with a nightmare scene that apparently when now he gets to do Justice League 2, the majority of that movie is gonna be in the Nightmare universe, right? And it explains everything we saw in BVS. Bruce Wayne even mentions it in here to Wonder Woman when he's at the back computer. He's like, I had a vision. I had a bad vision with Barry coming to me and stuff like that. So you see he's slow burning everything, setting it up for this eventually to be coming. By the end of this movie, we are thrown into the Nightmare universe again for like 15 minutes, and it's setting up for the Justice League 2, and we understand now that so Darkseid got the anti-life equation, and with that is controlling Superman, and or Superman went rogue because apparently Batman let Lois die. All this stuff, it's really, really cool, and it's giving me like that Elseworlds vibes that I love so much. Like Joker literally says to Batman, I wonder in what alternate universe like you actually died instead of letting other people do the dying, and he literally says that. I'm like, this is giving me those Injustice vibes, that alternate reality stuff that I love so much. I say it all the time, I love Elseworlds. I want it so bad. And now I just really, really want to see his vision, in full. You know what I mean? Because like you said, Darkseid, we basically saw all of Darkseid on Vero. Snyder showed us, because he's not really in the movie all that much. There's probably like 2 or 3 scenes with him, and each time he's on screen for like a minute or two. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then even towards the end, when they have that big battle with Steppenwolf, and we see Darkseid through the boom tube, he's standing there, but he's not talking. You just see him. So, so he's really gonna be, come into play in a big way in Justice League 2, which again, I'm going to keep saying it, but that's got to happen now, right? The hashtag restore the Snyderverse is already the new thing trending, much like release the Snyder Cut was. Now it's restore the Snyderverse. So, especially if the views are there on HBO Max, there's no reason at this point for HBO Max not to do it, So that's the kind of thing that's annoying too, where it's like they kind of had cold feet, for better or for worse, right? Whether you like BVS or not, it's like, this is the plan you set on. See it out, because at the same time, even though not everyone, the overwhelming majority of people are swooning over it, you still have at least half the people like die-hard Snyder DC character fans that would have saw that through, and you still would have had the other people who didn't like it see it because it's Batman and Superman. So it's just kind of annoying that you see them back out like, no, wait, we gotta quote unquote be like Marvel. And then it just derailed all of the DCU and all. It makes me wonder too, like if we got the Snyder's Justice League the way he intended it to, would we be getting movies like the Matt Reeves Batman movie? Would we be having gotten the Joker movie? You know what I mean? Because it's really once the Justice League that the DCEU live action movie started falling apart, and they just started being like, okay, well, let's do one-off stuff. What can we do? You know what I mean?
Right.
So it really makes me wonder where we would have been if that movie came out. Because we were at the Comic-Con in Hall H, I believe like in 2015 or something like that. Yep. They had a Nightwing movie planned. Yeah. They had a Batgirl, which apparently is still coming out. Warner Brothers just announced that on Investors
So we
Day.
hear, yeah.
Yeah. But all those stuff were coming down the pipeline, and we probably would have had a lot of them by now. So I'm very curious if this is going to set any of that back in motion, and what is the future going to be like now, right? Because we have Flashpoint, starring Ezra Miller yet again as the Flash. That's introducing the multiverse. So where is that going to go now? What are you going to do? Are you going to stay on the path of try to like keeping Ben Affleck as Batman now? Because clearly, I would say this is going to be a successful movie, and fans are going to want more. Because if response stays true, for the coming weeks and months here. So what are you going to do? Are you now going to again get Henry Cavill back? Are you going to make sure it's intertwined with the Black Adam movie now? Are you going to go reshoot a scene for the new Suicide Squad movie to make sure it's intertwined? You know what I mean? Like, what is happening now? Because they didn't know, but I'd imagine now they're like, oh, they really like it. We got to make sure it's all connected. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
It really is going to boil down to, where does Warner Brothers, intend to place this in their overall plans, right? Because again, and this is kind of the frustration. It's kind of weird. I feel very odd about the whole ordeal because watching this movie, it really left me feeling more frustrated, not less, about the state of DC. I don't know how to explain it, but
because you're like, this is really good. Why didn't you just give this to us in the first place?
Yes, but it's not just that, right? It's that, it's like, wow, this was a real tragedy because this is so much better as a film than what we got in 2017, right? At 4 hours long, a Lord of the Rings version of a DC film, right? It was so much better as a film. It's so much more coherent, explained so much more about the characters, gave us all this, even the scenes that we saw in the 2017 version, the versions of those scenes in Snyder's cut they're all so much cooler. Even the fight sequences, right?
Dude.
Going down the list, everything from our introduction to Themyscira and the Amazons and how they were shown, so much cooler than anything we've seen on, and that is no slight to Patty Jenkins. She did a great job with Wonder Woman, but this was the coolest, in my opinion, it was the coolest version of the Amazons we'd seen. It was a 300 style scene on Themyscira. It was just awesome. Awesome. Then you go to the Atlanteans. The Atlanteans, his version of the Atlanteans and what they did with Atlantis. Even the way that the characters looked, I thought was better. It was a more serious tone. Not in a bad way, but the tone from color grade to the lighthearted beats to the characters' behavior, it all took the material far more seriously in a good way, in the way that we have always said. Like, you can take these stories and these characters seriously and not make it tongue in cheek. You know, one of the biggest issues that you had, you kind of already alluded to it in the first Justice League film, was how Batman was kind of like the comic relief of the film. You know, poking fun at himself, well, I did not miss you, and all this kind of a thing, right? God, you hated horrible. That. It made you want to like punch somebody in the face, and I was with you, right? So he took all those type of things. None of that was in there. Those like weirdly
during
placed.
The Superman fight scene in the Whedon cut where Batman like gets thrown, he's like, gonna feel that in the morning. It's like, no.
Exactly. None of those lines were in there. It had lighthearted moments, but it was the appropriate lighthearted moments, like the banter between Arthur / Aquaman and Barry Allen Flash, right? The Flash, right? Flash was he was the lighthearted character of the movie. He was the kind of no, you can't even call him comic relief because he's not. But I will say,
the Flash is one of my gripes with the movie. That's one of my gripes. I will say that. Well, I'll get into that later, though. In the Snyder Cut, yes. I'll get into that later, though.
Well, you know how I feel about Ezra Miller's Flash. He was my least favorite casting, and his version of the Flash is my least favorite of all of the Snyder verse characters. But even with that, this was a much better version of that Flash than we saw in the Justice League. It was better than the Whedon cut, yes. A lot of the same jokes were there, a lot of the same behaviors, but he roped it back. He had it to where it was more appropriately delivered, I felt. So where it fit the overall tone of the film in an appropriate way. Whereas in the first film, there was so many beats like that just felt off, and like it was trying to be parts, not slapstick, but it was trying to be too funny. And it wasn't taking the source material serious enough to where, you know, Marvel had figured that out. They figured out that perfect balance of being lighthearted and having, you know, kind of comedic characters like Peter Parker Spider-Man and how he fits in with like the overall Avengers and Civil War, let's say, and how he the banter that he has, or like the beats between Winter Soldier and the Falcon in Civil War, right? Where they have this, you know, buddy cop rivalry that they dislike each other and so forth. And they're getting a show out of it. So Marvel had figured that out. And DC was trying to be like, oh, we can do that too. And that was never what that movie was supposed to be, right? So he shot this whole film that was totally outside the scope of that type of a film. And then they tried to, you know, force a square peg into a round hole, and it just didn't work. But this version of it, the Snyder Cut version, you see all of that roped back and placed appropriately the way it was supposed to be presented, and all of that gets fixed. So you by the time you're done with this film, you're left going, everything about this, every aspect of this movie is cooler than what we saw in the 2017 version of the film. So it's like you have to let them finish this, but then where it takes us all the way back to the beginning of where does it fall into the DC universe? Because you're still got the Flash planned with Ezra Miller, the Flashpoint film. You still are using a Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. We just got her second film. You're still using Aquaman. You got his second film slated already, right? So you still doing these things, but now if you continue this, which you know that if the roar was loud to release the Snyder Cut before we got this film, my God, man, it's going to be a freaking tidal wave of people going, bring on Justice League 2.
It just means it's going to happen, which is great.
Without question.
Because even, you know, whether they want to do it or not, that just means the money's there, and that's all the business really cares about, right? They're like, why would they not make something that's going to make them millions of dollars? You know what I mean? That's all they really care about.
Yeah,
so,
because this was an epic mistake, right? This
but
was
they don't care about that, though.
Brothers part.
They're not going to look at it that way. They're just going to be like, can we make money? Okay, we'll do it. They don't care that it was a mistake.
They're never going to admit that, no.
Yeah. But going back to what you were saying earlier, one of my, you know, because I kind of want to get into like how much cooler his scenes were, even the ones that were like used but extended or shortened. I want to get into that a little more because dude, it's amazing how different the tone was in this film, right? Like, it was weird seeing a lot of like the same scenes, like the opening scene with Bruce Wayne going to Aquaman looking for Arthur Curry. Yeah. Like, we saw that scene or version of that scene in the Whedon cut, but this one was like, it's incredible. Like, obviously we know these things, but how the score, the lighting, all that stuff can completely make it feel different, right?
Yeah.
It literally makes you can make, that thing inside you be like, oh, this is awesome. Or, oh, this is stupid. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It was a total tonal shift.
The total shift was amazing. And one of the biggest things for me was that bank scene at the beginning with Wonder Woman. Like, again, we saw that in the Whedon cut, but this, dude, it was extended, and the way he made Wonder Woman move, the brutality but grace she had at the same time, he nailed the freaking, like, again, I guess that grace and like beauty of Wonder Woman with a mixture of complete and utter brutality at the same time. like she's literally stomping men in the chest, making them fly through freaking walls, throwing them into walls. The way she moves her freaking arms blocking bullets, shuffling at super speed is the coolest freaking thing ever. Like, this is amazing. I just want to see this all day. Like, it was so freaking cool. Like, again, in the Whedon cut, we see that like she uses her bracelets to block the bullets from that terrorist shooting the kids. But we get a longer, cooler version of that here, and it's great. It's great. And then he mixes it at the end with that Patty Jenkins first Wonder Woman vibe where, there's this little girl doesn't stand up, and she's like, why don't you stand up, little one? She's like, I want to be like, can I be like you when I grow up? And she's like, you can be whatever you want, which is awesome because it plays to the whole fact where obviously any kid can be whatever they want. And, Wonder Woman saying that's because she's a little girl and she's a woman, but it also plays to the bigger fact of that where like anyone can be whatever they want as long, as they try hard and stuff like that. So that always hits me on the hero level because that's why I love superheroes. It's like, yeah, I can do whatever I want if I try really hard.
I'm more the skeptic. I watch that and I go, no, you can't do what Wonder Woman does.
Oh, wow. Well, someone can't move at super speed either, Tim.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's like, oh, can I be like you when I grow up? No, not unless you can be unborn and born in Amazon. No, you can't. But you can do anything humans can do that you want to do.
This is the world of metas. You don't know she's going to have some freaking chemical spill on her and she'll become Wonder Woman.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. She could be struck by some kind of cosmic beam. Yeah.
Anyway, that was really dope. But then the Themyscira stuff, like one of the lines that stood out to me when Steppenwolf appears to get their mother box is he's talking about like fear and stuff like that. She's like, I want to see your fear. And the queen obviously says, Amazon, show him your fear. And they're like batting on their freaking like shields and stuff like that, saying, we have no fear. And then it was just like you said, 300 bad, like all the women in that scene were awesome. Like they got dude, it was just so cool. Then he's chasing them with someone was chasing them while they're on horses. Again, this is just extended stuff we saw in the Whedon cut, but it was so much better with the score. There was even different scenes and action beats that we didn't see that were in this, and I'm like, oh my God, yes, that just the whole freaking thing. And that was like the first hour of the film, really. And I was like, we got 3 hours left. We have 3 hours left.
Yeah, let's not skip the part that right out of the gate, right at the beginning of the film, right? He starts the movie by explaining to us, unlike the first film that just gave us like this in memoriam opening of Superman, this opening explains to us almost right out of the gate the severity and the importance of the death of Superman to the overall story arc, right? And the mother boxes and Steppenwolf appearing on Earth and how Superman's death impacted all of it, right? And then the movie then goes on later, as it continues to roll out, we learn and they actually tell us that the mother boxes were not active. They did not activate until Superman died, that the mother boxes were fearful of the Kryptonian. They were scared of him, and it was Superman's presence that kept the mother boxes at bay, right? Even, I'm talking about after they had activated it. Why the other ones didn't activate.
That was like an overarching theme in the movie too, right? Because Steppenwolf, when he lands on Earth and he's talking to Desaad, he says, there's no Kryptonians or Guardians here. You know what I mean? Like,
which, by the way, is another scene that was in the original trailer that we were like, when we saw the film, we're like, where were these cool moments? Remember when Zack Snyder showed us the original trailer and we were like, dude, and then we saw the movie and we're like, half the stuff that we saw in the trailer
there
wasn't in
was
the movie.
lots of stuff like that. Yeah. Like Cyborg catching the car and all that stuff. Yeah, there was lots of stuff like that. Yeah. But I thought that was really cool for that to be a thing, because they made it a point, even with the Justice League constantly saying like, no, like this is the guy. Like Superman, like they treated Superman like Superman. They're like, no. Like I'm strong and stuff, and you're fast, and you rule the sea. But this is Superman. You know what I mean? Like there's like, it doesn't matter how strong and fast we are. We need the big blue guy over here, you know? And I love that even Steppenwolf was saying that to Desaad. He's like, there's no Kryptonians here. There's no lanterns. So we could take them this time, making it a point to be like, that's why we could take them, because the Kryptonian isn't here, and neither is the lanterns and stuff like that, or the Amazons. But I was like, this is great. This is so cool.
Let me ask you this. What was, I mean, because we're going to continue to like go off on all the individual pieces, but what would you say was your favorite aspect of the film?
Dang. Not favorite scene, favorite like aspect as far as like theme?
Overall aspect of the film. I would say, let's say overall addition to the film.
You know, it might very well be that. The fact that they basically made it a point to say, and even not say, but just with actions, that how important Superman is to the DC universe.
Okay. Because that's the reason I brought it up. What you were saying was exactly my favorite aspect of this film. I 100% agree.
Right. And I think we're right there with it, because, you know, I say it, I'm like a freaking broken record all the time, where I'm like, you know, I always bring back like what Jeff Johns did with the ending of Doomsday Clock, and just how Superman in general, like love him or hate him, like he's the guy. He's DC, right? Without the success of Superman from Action Comics 1, you potentially would not have the Justice League, Batman, Wonder Woman, all these characters. It was basically like, oh, this is selling really well. People want more superheroes kind of like that. We'll make Batman. We'll make Wonder Woman. We'll do the Flash. You know what I mean? So like, again, love him or hate him, this is the dude that is responsible for everything to follow within the DC universe as we know it, and definitely the Justice League, right? So like, you always, I think comic book historians and people just fans and people who love these characters understand that, again, whether you're a Superman fan like me or you're just like whatever, you at least respect the fact that he is the center of the DC universe. He's the heart of it, right? He's the one, he's the beacon of hope. He's the one who will show people and lead the way, because that's his character. That's literally why he was created. His name is Superman. Like I say it all the time. So it's like literally like Superman. He's the best of humanity. He's Superman. Right. So and it's kind of ironic because he's an alien too, which makes it really cool. So he's sent here to, I think, again, in the Snyder movie, Man of Steel, and they even use it in this freaking movie. Jor-El, his father, they use that monologue again, where they use actually both of his fathers, Jonathan Kent and Jor-El, at the same time when Superman is brought back to life by the Mother Box. How you hear those monologues from both of it, his Earth father and his biological father, saying, "Look, Kal-El, you could show them how to be better. You could be that beacon of light, of that hope. You could be better. You could, you know what I mean?" And that whole thing, I'm like, yes, this is Superman. So the fact that Scott Snyder is right there with us, and he's like, no, I agree. Superman's the guy. Makes me so happy. So happy. But it also makes me like, why haven't we gotten a Man of Steel 2? What's happening? What is happening?
That again, you're going right back to like, what the freak, Warner Brothers, right?
Dude.
That is again the biggest thing that I was left with this film. But go to the Superman point, I could not agree more. That was my favorite addition by this film to the overall story, that we were left without, honestly, after the Justice League 2017 version, was because, look, Superman, the reason that I love Superman, the reason that you love Superman, the reason I'm such a sucker for that character is because the character is supposed to represent, we say hope, right? But hope of what? Hope that he is the embodiment and supposed to represent what humanity can be if we choose good, if we choose to do the right thing, if we choose to look after each other, right? If we choose to care enough about each other to the point where we're willing to sacrifice ourselves, to help others, to love others. That's what he represents. But at the same time, he also represents what could happen, how dark humanity can become should we choose the opposite. And I love that is exactly what Zack Snyder is doing with him in this universe. And he's showing that through his Justice League film, right? We started getting a taste of it in the Nightmare kind of sequence of BVS. And then we're seeing this being rolled out more in the Justice League film, where you're seeing him embody that idea of, if Kal-El embraces what he can become, right? This leader, this symbol of strength and hope of what can be if we choose good. But if he goes bad, if he goes dark, it's over. Lights out.
We've all read Injustice. We played the video game. We know where that goes.
Right? Exactly. So I love how he is toying with that element of the character, because that is really who he is at his core. And that is why in the comics, there is nothing that he can't do. There's no limit to his potential, because that is the idea of humanity, right? If we choose good, if we choose the right things, the right direction, if we choose to do the hard things, but in a good, decent way that is rooted in love and kindness and consideration and empathy and all of these things, then there's no limit to our potential. We can achieve almost anything, right? And that's what but if we choose the opposite, as we see by the world around us now, when we choose bad things, the world can get real dark real fast. And that's what he's doing with this movie. And I love, love, love that element of it. That when he shows up after he comes back in this film,
it's great,
dude. That scene where he shows up at the end with Steppenwolf, and he's about to take out Cyborg, and instead Superman comes in and his axe hits Superman's shoulder and just doesn't even make a dent. And Superman literally just says, "I'm not impressed," and then proceeds to absolutely destroy Steppenwolf.
Well, he freezes it. He freezes the axe with his frost breath first, shattering it.
Freezes it and shatters it.
Yeah.
It was so much cooler than anything we saw in the freaking 2017 version. That's what I'm saying. It's like, it was so cool, but it also kind of made me mad.
Well, dude,
why are we just now seeing this?
And I loved how effortlessly, it wasn't a fight when Superman showed up, right? You would think, like, people always say, we need to dumb down Superman's powers so the fight's not over in 2 seconds, and it's not boring. I'm like, no.
Right.
I want to see him throw someone around like a ragdoll for 10 minutes. I'll watch that. What are you talking about?
Yeah, man.
Because he uses heat vision to freaking laser off one of his horns. He's freaking burning into his chest. And then because there's other stuff happening, because at that time, that's the climax of the movie. Cyborg's trying to stop the mother boxes from turning into one, merging into one. And
right, he's trying to separate them.
Separate them, right? And the Flash is trying to help him with that, with the electric current and all that stuff. So it's cool. But while we're jumping around from whatever character is doing, we keep cutting back rather, to Superman just punching Steppenwolf into the ground and you see the shockwaves just constantly hitting the ground. It's the best freaking thing ever.
Oh my God.
But earlier,
so
because in the Justice League film, obviously that movie, not the best, the Whedon cut, rather, right? I think everyone would agree on that. But the one thing that I think a lot of people would say, but that was a cool scene, was when Superman was resurrected and he started fighting the Justice League, as he was trying to get a bearing on everything, because he was just brought back to life, and he kind of didn't know where he was or who anyone was, right? So until Lois shows up. So we get that happens again, but way better. We get the whole thing where they start attacking him. Superman's literally soloing Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and Cyborg as Flash is trying to be quick, run around him, but Superman could spot him, which I remember when I saw it in the theater, I was like, oh, that's awesome. And it was awesome again.
It was the coolest scene in the entire movie.
Yeah,
of the original 2017 film.
It was great. But here we get more of him fighting Wonder Woman one-on-one. And Tim, I think that was my favorite, because as cool as Steppenwolf was, don't get me wrong, amazing. For some reason, scenes, I don't know why us fans like seeing two heroes fight, especially two powerful heroes. For some reason, it's just fun, even though they're on the same team and they're supposed to not be fighting. But to see him literally manhandle her, right? was just
no pun intended.
Like, because you know her like ultimate attack in the Snyderverse is like clanging her two bracelets together and it creates like a massive concussive blast to like wreck shop. But he just he's a Man of Steel. He's almost as fast as the Flash, so he just comes in, puts his hand between her wrists. She can't do it, and then he headbutts her, so she headbutts back, and he kind of shakes it off. So he's like, huh. He levitates in the air, holding her by the freaking arms, and freaking headbutts her into the cement. Like, go away now. It was just the like. That was in the Snyder Cut. I mean, those
were a lot of those beats were in the 2017 version.
But it was so much better in here.
But it was elaborated. Here's what made the scene better, because I agree with you. That scene, while most of it, I would say, was in the 2017 version, and it was the coolest part of the 2017 version of Justice League. In my opinion, it was the coolest scene. Mm-hmm. Even though a lot of it was I would say most of it was in the original film. They elaborated on it, just like everything else in the film. They elaborated on it. They changed the overall tone. The score was great. Aided it so much better, in my view. And they changed some of the elements. They completely changed why Lois Lane was there. They changed how she got involved. They changed Batman's interaction with Superman and how all of that. And here's the thing. And this, again, it's just, I'm going to keep coming back to this because this is the biggest theme of my overall takeaway is why change any of that? Why do it? You didn't add anything to the film. You made it so Batman can make a funny joke.
That's why.
Yeah. You made it more odd. None of it seemed weird that she would be able to even show up there at that moment, even though they painted like Batman, arrange the whole thing, bring in the big guns or whatever it is that he says in the original. It just wasn't, the way they set it up was perfect. Well, the way Zack Snyder did, it made more sense. It flowed seamlessly. And then the changes they made, it just was like, why even make those changes? It didn't even make sense to make those changes. That's why I kept going. I kept saying from the beginning why this was ego, man. This so much of what happened was ego driven. And that to me is one of the biggest tragedies, is that this was a good film that got butchered and that we didn't get to see for literally 4 years because of some people couldn't just let get out of the way of their own ego. Mm-hmm. And I am so happy, not to just keep harping on it, but I just, as somebody who, as a storyteller or filmmaker, I just am so happy for Zack Snyder, for his entire crew, for all of the cast, for the writers, everybody who worked, all of the VFX artists, everybody who worked on this film originally going back to 2016, who put in literally years of effort. I am so happy for them that they are finally getting their payoff. And I just hope that they finally get all of the praise and the enjoyment that they should have gotten in 2017 out of this release that's finally happening for them. Because again, I'm going to reverse back to like that Superman scene, that whole scene where you see Superman as like, oh, this is why they needed the Kryptonian. Like he is just in a different class, right? As far as like these characters go. And again, Wonder Woman is right there.
She is.
In comics especially. Mm-hmm. She's right there with him. She's a god, basically. But she has the blood of the old gods. Exactly. But when it comes down to it, even in comics, Superman is stronger. Superman is the more powerful of the two. If the two go head to head, it's going to be close, but Superman's going to win.
More often than not, right? Like Superman always wins. Right. But it's like that for everyone. Like it's Superman against Shazam. Like more often than not. Yes, Shazam has beaten Superman.
Exactly right.
But like if they, go to have 10 fights, Superman's probably going to win most of them. And same thing with Wonder Woman. So it's like everyone's like on that same level with him, but he's Superman. So he's always one notch above. You know what I mean? Yeah. He's just... He's Superman.
Yeah,
it's like saying he's
for
Batman.
Me, it doesn't. It even. But in the end, and this kind of was my overall point, is it doesn't really matter so much about his power set, right? In the end, as much as what he represents, which is why it's so important that they show the strength of him as a character the importance of him as a character, of what he represents. And I just, those elements, all of those things, him being true to those things and kind of carrying through. And the other thing, and I think you probably feel the same way, I feel like he corrected and fixed a lot of the things that they got wrong or got missed in BVS. A lot of the things we had problems with in BVS in terms of story development and so forth, where one of our big complaints is they tried to do too much in a single film, and there just wasn't enough time, even with the director's cut, which was 3 hours. With this one, I really felt like they fixed some of those issues, and this was by far, I think, the most coherent and the most well-rounded and best put together film that he's done in the DC universe.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think that's no question for sure, right? It's just, especially just the sheer accomplishment of it, of how many, because it was very much like Watchmen is one of my favorite superhero movies, right? And I've always wondered, I always said when he got freaking Man of Steel and all that stuff and he started doing it, I'm like, yes, that makes all the sense because Watchmen's great. Like, this is the guy. And he showed with this movie that if he's let to do what he wants to do, he could definitely handle several characters in one movie and make it all work and coherent. You know what I mean? So yeah. I'm very, very happy with what he did with this. But I'm also, like you said, some stuff made me mad because as awesome as the scenes were, they made me mad because it would have been so cool, right? Because at the end of the movie, you know, at the end of the Whedon cut, Deathstroke comes up to Lex Luthor on the yacht. That happens in this movie, obviously, but it's a completely different conversation. In the Whedon cut, he's basically there because Lex Luthor is inviting freaking Deathstroke to be part of like the Injustice League or the Legion of Doom, like their version of a supervillain team, right? That's that whole conversation. This movie has, in the Snyder Cut, nothing to do with that. Not at all. The whole reason why Deathstroke is meeting with Lex is to go after Batman. Right? And not only that, Lex Luthor tells him who Batman is. He tells him it's Bruce Wayne, which, as we know behind the scenes, after BVS, Ben Affleck with Warner Brothers was going to direct and star as Batman in a solo movie. Ben Affleck's even come out and said openly he was the one who leaked that Deathstroke test footage from years ago because he was so excited with how it looked and happy to be working on that movie that he purposely leaked it just to get fans riled up and get buzz going. So we know that not only was Ben Affleck going to star in and direct his own Batman movie, the main villain in that movie was going to be Deathstroke.
Yes, indeed.
So that was a sheer tie-in to that movie that was going to come after the Justice League. And now I don't know if we're going to get it. I know there's rumors of us probably getting it as a mini-series on HBO Max where people are saying Ben Affleck is in talks to return for a mini-series with his Batman and possibly do what he was going to do with the movie with Deathstroke. So hopefully, please, I want that, especially since now they set it up in, like, officially with the Snyder Cut. But it's just like, wow, like things were like literally so different where it was the exact same scene, but a completely different conversation, setting up something completely different. Literally, one is setting up the Injustice League or Legion of Doom, and the other one is setting up a Batman solo movie where it's all about Batman and Deathstroke going toe-to-toe. That's amazing. Like crazy. And that's the thing where it's like awesome, that is great, and it makes sense with everything that we know, Ben Affleck wanted to do with the Batman script, but at the same time it's like, oh no, is that ship sailed? Please, no. you know what I mean? I want that. I want to see that Arkham Origins cinematic come to life where Batman is fighting Deathstroke. I want that in live action. That would be the coolest thing. Everyone knows I'm a biggest Batman fan. That is no freaking secret here on Variant. So that is like one of the number one things I'd want to see in all of comic books. A solo Batman movie where him and Deathstroke go at it like that cinematic from the Arkham Origins video game. I want it, Tim. I want it. So please.
I know
please.
You do, buddy.
Can we have like a restore the Ben Affleck Batman movie hashtag going? Like, can we do that?
Let me tell you something. I honestly think I'm going to say it like this. If Warner Brothers can't see, and I'm saying this loosely because I think they do, if they can't see that they should take hold of Zack Snyder's, DC universe and make that a HBO Max exclusive with limited runs in theaters leading to coinciding with, the HBO Max. If they can't see that they can take that and turn that into an ongoing series that would dramatically improve their subscriptions and grow their business, they need to revamp and reshuffle their leadership. Because to me at this point, that's like an obvious, right? There's so much set up
it's like
here.
Printing money, right?
That fans obviously want. Disney Plus, the Disney company with Disney Plus, they've got all the content that they can handle, right? When it comes to, that's why their subscription service is so successful. They've got the Star Wars franchise. They've got the Marvel franchises. They've got Pixar. They've got Disney, Disney Animated. They've got all of these franchises to work with to where they can now mix and match, where the things that happen on Disney Plus directly affect the things that you see on the big screen, and vice versa, right? And we've already seen just a taste of what they're looking to do with that regarding the Marvel Cinematic Universe with WandaVision, right? And now we've got this week, we've got Falcon and the Winter Soldier landing. It's going to have the same impact, right? These are the reasons, not just those, but everything that I just mentioned. These are the reasons why people are subscribing to Disney by the tens of millions, and why they were successful right out of the gate, because they knew Disney wasn't going to mess around. Disney announced right out of the gate their intention to integrate all of these big ticket items that we're all fans of and we all spend money to consume into Disney Plus. We knew that. Warner Brothers has that same opportunity with DC. They have the same opportunity. They just have not known how to bring it all together. And so there's just been all this kind of loose. I mean, how many times have we already complained about why isn't this movie on HBO Max? Why isn't this on the app?
Batman Begins and The Dark Knight are back on Netflix. I'm not joking.
I didn't.
I'm not joking.
Is that true?
That is really true. If you go on Netflix,
they're on HBO Max now, aren't they? Because they were before.
They took them off, and I think they took them off because now they're back on Netflix.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
I get that some of this is contractual obligation that happened before.
But what kind of contract is that like you have it for 6 months, I'll have it for 6 months. You have
it might be something they worked out with them after the fact to say, look, we still need this, so maybe we can we'll kick you back a little bit of money and then we can put it on our subscription service and all this kind of a thing. Who knows?
That's just confusing for the audience though, because it's like, wait, is it on HBO Max or Netflix? Like, where do I go to watch it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it should be just living there, right? And again, I totally get that there are previous contractual obligations. I get all that. My point is that you can sidestep that if you've got all these other contractual obligations that are just kind of floating out there that you're waiting for them to expire and all this kind of a thing, and it's hurting your ability to put in a broad and substantive catalog on your streaming service that you're trying to sell to an audience, then why don't you announce, hey, we're going to be elaborating on all these characters. We're going to bring this universe and this universe in here, and we're going to do it with original content, because then you don't have to worry about those contractual obligations, because all of this is original, brand new content. And you can do that with DC. You can do it with DC animated films. You can do it with broad scope DC expansion, right? And you can now you've got this. Look, again, if they aren't already full scale talks to, okay, how can we turn this into a series, a grouping of series, on these individual characters to break out and elaborate on all these different storylines that Zack Snyder was setting up here, and then proceed with a Justice League 2 and a Justice League 3, which Zack Snyder sadly has already elaborated to all of us on, right? So they're going to have to change those up at least a touch. So there's some surprises there, because unfortunately he spoiled literally both films to the entire world because he didn't think they were going to get made. But again, that's even with that being the case, and him having told everybody kind of the bullet point outlines of what they would have been, that is not going to stop people from wanting to see it. If anything, it made people go, holy crap, you need to make that. I want to see that. Right?
Well, I was going to say,
so it's you have all of these things.
Yeah, I don't think, even though it's a bummer that we know what would happen, I don't even think he would change the plot that much. He'd be like, nope. You know what I mean?
I agree with you. I agree. Because what he laid out makes you go, oh, I would need to see that. I need to see what that looks like in live action. Right. So the opportunity is there from the Batman series that you're talking about with Ben Affleck, where you bring him in and you do that mini series with him and Deathstroke, where you explain to us how, what their kind of story arc back and forth is and how we end up in that nightmare verse, that filling in that gap between where we end off at the end of Justice League and where we end up at the beginning of Justice League 2 or, somewhere in those lines, filling in those gaps, again, similar to what Disney's doing and the MCU is doing with their Marvel series, WandaVision and so forth. They're filling in gaps. Mm-hmm. That's what they're doing. And the opportunity is there for them to do this with all of this stuff. I mean, you could easily do a setup Flash series. I mean, they introduced, that's another one of the things. We finally got introduced to Kiersey Clemons as Iris West in this film.
Yes, which we saw, which he released the cinematics or storyboards for years ago. And we actually saw bits of that scene in the original trailer for the film.
We did. And then we never got to see it played out on the big screen. And it was a very cool freaking scene, man. Like that addition, showing him, meet, Iris for the first time. That whole scene was dope. The visual effects were great. So like you could do something with the Flash easily without any question now, especially as they have now elaborated so, I think, really, really well on Cyborg and his story.
Oh yeah. I think he was fleshed out the most in this movie.
Without question, he was up there as one of the top most fleshed out characters in the entire film. As you said, he ended up being one of the hearts of the film. His overall story arc with his dad, I just loved. Yes. And the way that Silas Stone ended up sacrificing himself so to give his son time and the opportunity to save the world, basically.
Putting a tracker on the mother box, essentially, by heating it up.
Exactly.
It was great, yeah.
It was just so well done, but how they played that whole story arc.
With the recording he left his son.
Sappy or cheesy or corny about it. It had a realistic tone to it, and to where, it kind of broke him at the end where he realized, like, I loved my dad, and he at the end, it goes back to him realizing, like, his father did what he could. He wasn't perfect, but he did what he could. That sort of a thing.
Well, yeah, to the point, because earlier in the movie, he was mad at him, essentially, because he's like, he literally says, if it wasn't for you, Mom would still be alive. Yeah. Yep. And he wouldn't even listen to the recording that Silas made for his son. He crushed it, but, freaking Cyborg having control of the mother box and all that alien tech was able to put it back together towards the end of the film and listen to the message his father told him. And that message actually narrates the ending of the film before it gets into the epilogue, which is the Nightmare verse. So I thought that was brilliant. Really cool.
Without any doubt. And you could easily take the story and elaborate on his story and on Cyborg as a character in his own miniseries.
Well, he was supposed to get his own solo film, but everything going on, with Ray Fisher and all the Warner Brothers execs, apparently they're like, nay, we don't. It's just more trouble than it's worth, so we're gonna axe it.
Yeah, and I mean, again, that makes sense. Ray Fisher. Sadly, I mean, I get why they're doing what they're doing. There was so much stuff that went on during that whole Justice League situation.
But see, all that drama, I really like. We're never gonna know, right? Because we're not in it. But it really makes you wonder, like, what was actually happening with this Snyder verse behind the scenes, like. What caused all the bad blood? What conversations were had? Were people making remarks like saying, screw Snyder and his stuff. This is my vision, or like, I'm not saying that happened, but like, what did happen? Like, it makes you wonder. Like, something had to be said by several people. Whether actors, execs, producers, that caused all this. You know what I mean? Because there was definitely a line in the sand, and people went to one side, and the other people went to the other side. So I just very curious.
Yeah, in the end, like you said, we're never gonna know.
No,
and I'm I don't really want to delve too much into it because we don't know, and I'm not going to speculate, and you don't want to get into laying blame on somebody's doorstep when you don't know if they had anything to do with anything. But clearly, in the end, what is clear is that the whatever happened with the Justice League film, and the two camps that kind of took root and were kind of clearly battling each other. It was about ego. It was about ego and money, and it's like it's like the same thing that's always at the root of everything bad, right? Ego, greed, and money. So it's like, regardless of what happens with Cyborg, they could easily take that care. If they can work something out with Ray Fisher and get all that cleared up, they could easily make that a series that would be good and interesting. If inside Snyder's universe and, guided by his hand. But you could say that about anything. We could get a Martian Manhunter film or either a solo film original on HBO Max or, again, a miniseries that explained to us and gives us his backstory leading up to the Justice League and him being introduced to the Justice League now that we've seen him in Zack Snyder's cut of the film and how he was supposed to be introduced. It was that, which, by the way, that was, I thought, the way that they introduced Manhunter and kind of just sprinkled him in a couple of times throughout the film. I thought that was really well done, really
That's
well
exactly
placed,
what I was
and
gonna,
very interesting.
That's what I was going to ask, because you just brought out Manhunter, because he's in the film twice, right? We find out he's disguises himself as Martha Kent, trying to get Lois Lane to go back to her normal life and back to society. Being, because after BVS, she's become a hermit, right? She visits the death site of Superman every single day, bringing a cup of coffee and stuff like that. And she hasn't been at the Daily Planet ever since. And Martian Manhunter, obviously, secretly being in this world since Man of Steel, goes to her disguised as Superman's mom, saying, "Hey, get back to your normal life. They need you out there." And then when he leaves the apartment, we see him turn into Martian Manhunter, which, again, it was one of those things where, like, I knew that was coming. That was one of the things that annoyed me. They released an image of Martha Kent with red eyes like 2 weeks ago online, and I'm like, why would you? And this isn't like a leaked image. This was like part of a clip.
Thankfully, I didn't see that.
I'm like, why would you show that? Like, because I knew, like, cause in my mind, two things. When I first saw that image, I'm like, two things. One, she's getting possessed by Darkseid or some crap like that. Or two, it's Martian Manhunter. So I'm like, what the? Like, so I saw that coming, and it was so annoying, where I'm like, this is awesome. Martian Manhunter is one of my favorite characters. Definitely one of my favorite underrated characters. But I knew this was kind of coming. So it's like, so it kind of like took a little bit of the wind out of the sails, even though, like, it was still cool to see how it happened and stuff like that. And I was kind of invested at that point. So it didn't take me by surprise, but it was still a little like, you know what I mean? Just because it was a first time seeing it kind of thing. And then at the end of the film, I thought the ending of the film, because that's his second and final appearance, where literally you could tell that was a reshoot too, because Ben Affleck was a lot skinnier,
a lot thinner
in that scene than he was in the rest of the movie. So you could definitely tell that was one of the reshoots amidst the pandemic and stuff like that. But where he comes out of like Wayne Manor, and Martian Manhunter's like, because he hears a sonic boom, right? And he comes outside and he sees Martian Manhunter just flying there, basically saying, "Hey, I'm glad you got the team together. I'm glad you riled them up. This is what the world needs. And if you need me, I'll contact you when things go down again." You know what I mean?
Right.
Basically saying, I'm going to be on the next fight with you guys. So Justice League 2, which is really cool. Because again, that's the stuff that the MCU does, right? Where they know they want to introduce a character like down the line, a major character, right? But they'll sprinkle him or her in and give you like a glimpse or just one scene to be like, this is coming next year. This is a big character, and he or she's coming next year. So it's like, but we're probably going to get a Justice League 2, so we're going to see him more, I would hope. So did you like his design, though? Did you like, because I will say.
I did.
You did like his design? I don't know how I felt about like the scarring on his body, on his arms and heads and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's one of those things where I didn't not like it. It's just not what I was expecting from seeing the concept art, because the concept art, he looked a little more traditional comic booky with the, his head a little more cone-headed, elongated, and less of like the scarring or whatever is on his Martian skin, but still cool nonetheless. I liked how the X, his famous X on his chest, was kind of like glowing, like some kind of power source. I thought that was really cool.
I agree. That's actually one of the aspects of it that I really liked, was it looked like the power source was embedded in him. Yeah. I thought that was very cool. I am such a fan of Harry Lennox. I really love him as an actor.
He's perfect.
I think that Yes, I think he's the perfect choice for John. I really, and the kind of the scarring that you're alluding to, that's one of the reasons why I was saying like we could easily get a backstory and where we can see like all, because he alludes there at the end, he kind of alludes to he's been through some stuff, right? And he says, when he's talking to Bruce, one of the last things he says is like, I've been a part of this world and it's time I start fighting for it, sort of a thing.
Yes.
And we could easily get a mini series that gives us his backstory and shows us all the things he's been through that's led him up to this point, including how, what happened on his home world and what led him to Earth and all of it.
For sure. And how he
could
became
easily be
to like infiltrate our military and be one of their generals, right?
Exactly. And he said he's taking, he says when he's talking to Bruce, I've taken many forms, right? And just elaborate on all that and give us a really cool Martian Manhunter series that leads us into either Justice League 2 or Justice League 3, somewhere in between. Because obviously if there's hopefully there's a Justice League 2, we're going to get a lot more Martian Manhunter, right? And I assume eventually we're going to get some Green Lanterns too.
At that point, yeah, Green Lanterns for sure. But like, as far as powerhouses go, for me, it's always Superman, Martian Manhunter, and Shazam. And now all three of them have been introduced into the DCEU. So when they're Tim, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something here. We'll break this down. When we eventually get all three of them together in one movie, can you imagine like a triple threat type scene where all three of them, three of the biggest powerhouses in all of the DC universe, hero-wise, start going after someone like Darkseid or something like that, or some other whatever villain they want to bring in? I want to see that like triple threat tag team of Superman, Martian Manhunter, and Shazam. Literally like gods just wrecking shop. That would be amazing.
Which leads to the other question, right? Is what does Zack Snyder intend to do with, if anything, do they intend to incorporate Shazam into what Zack Snyder is doing? Was that ever his intention? Was that ever part of his plan?
Right.
Would he be able to, or would he be interested in integrating him? That's unclear. They really did not say one way or another. That's one of the things we do not know.
Man, that's a nerdgasm if I've ever had one. When that day happens.
No joke. And speaking of other gods, by the way, going back to that scene at toward the beginning, it's not, I can't say it's toward the beginning of the film. It's probably almost an hour into the film, where Wonder Woman gives us that expositional scene where she explains
the past,
the past, where that big long flashback, which again, a very small portion of that was in the original 2017.
But it was Steppenwolf instead of Darkseid.
But it was Steppenwolf, exactly. It was Steppenwolf, not Darkseid. And this time it was Snyder's version of that, which is the young Darkseid. Euxus, at the time, he's kind of a prince, not this massive, god that everybody worships yet. But in that scene where she explains, why she explains what the mother boxes are and how they're used and what they do. And she explains this first war where the Atlanteans, the Amazons, and man all came together to battle, and the gods actually all came together to battle for one cause, for the sake of Earth and the world. We get to see one of the things, and I can't remember. Do you remember if they showed Zeus in the 2017 version? I cannot remember.
I don't remember at all. No, I don't. Because the scene was so much shorter in that version.
Shorter, yeah. And so if they did, I guess we can say it like this: if they did, it was very brief. And it was just kind of passed over very, flippantly. Mm-hmm. In this scene, it was so well elaborated, and it was literally a 300 style world war. It was
great.
It was like the end game, right, where Thanos shows up with his armies, and all of the armies of Earth collide.
The Atlanteans, the Amazons, type of a scene. The Greek gods, and
you had
the
Green Lanterns, the old gods. But seeing Zeus and Ares and Artemis and the Green Lanterns are there, and the Amazons there in full force, and the Atlanteans there, and all of the armies of men, I mean, it was freaking dope. And I felt like, anyway, this was like a tease, right? That's why he put it in there. This was like a foreshadowing
of
tease
what the second movie would be like, right?
Of what I think the third movie, right? Because the third movie is supposed to be where you have this big final climactic endgame style war with the full Justice League where the Lanterns are there and Martian Manhunter's part of the team probably.
And Shazam, because I want
Shazam by that time. But the entire, like all the armies of Earth partner with, the heroes and, and they go to battle finally for the sake and the fate of all of Earth.
Dude, you're getting the gears going, because in that sense, like in that kind of battle, right, where it would be that Endgame, Infinity War, or even airport scene at the Civil War sequence where it's just all these people fighting.
Yes.
Like Shazam would kind of act as their Spider-Man, right? Where it would be hilarious.
And Flash now, based on his version.
And Flash, because they'd probably be like buddies, right? But like Shazam, it would be funnier because he's literally Superman, but with like this kid personality being like, I just can't imagine the writing and jokes that would be being had with like this Superman that's freaking cracking jokes on like what's happening. It's like, guys, he's bleeding green. Is this normal? Okay, I'll just use my lightning. like all this stuff. Oh, there's just so much opportunity there.
So fun.
Yeah.
So fun. And the other thing too, man, and after this, I was like, man, they need to make this just so I can see more of that. That brief scene where you see the Nightmare version. It's when just as they're about to bring Superman back. This is also another, I thought, one of the coolest scenes of the movie, where they showed right as they're about to drop the mother box and Flash is about to bring power back to the mother box, the AI in the ship, the Kryptonian ship, starts telling them, hey, this is a bad idea. Don't do this. We highly recommend you do not do this.
There's no turning back.
There's no turning back. This is going to set a chain of events in motion that you cannot undo, and it's going to be way worse than you think. And Cyborg has, as he's making contact with the Kryptonian ship, it gives him a flash of what that potential future will look like. Mm-hmm. And he sees Darkseid and his forces killing all the Justice League members.
Yep.
Right? Except for Superman, who basically he takes under his wing apparently. But what we know is, especially after they announced it in this movie, which they did not in the first, which is another thing. And I'm just like, God, they're so stupid. was how they, Steppenwolf sees that the anti-life equation is on Earth. It's written into the surface of the planet somewhere.
Yep.
Right? So that's another thing that was introduced into this.
Well, that's like the biggest thing. That's the reason why Darkseid wants to come to Earth.
That's why Superman goes bad and everything. Yeah. Right. Is so he gets corrupted by the anti-life equation, and that's really, he basically becomes Darkseid's enforcer. And so they explain all of that, but he sees this, that he gets a glimpse of this possible future and outcome of what they're about to do.
Nightmareverse.
And during that, you see Darkseid stab Aquaman, Arthur Curry, with his own Triton. And as he's doing it, you see him use his Omega beams. Freaking amazing.
Underwater, mind you.
That was the underwater. That was the first time we have ever seen Darkseid's Omega beams used in live action.
Which they also put in a TV spot.
Freaking dope.
That was also in a TV spot.
No way.
Yes, it was. That was also on literally the week, like 5 days ago.
Arris, you're lying to me.
No, that was in a TV spot. It was all over.
I don't even know why I'm surprised.
That picture was.
I don't even know why I'm surprised. Thankfully, I did not see that. I stopped watching,
and it went everywhere. It was everywhere.
Dude. Okay, you know what? Oh man,
it's like, because it was only for like 2 or 3 seconds.
I'm so glad I did not see.
It's like, why are you showing the only time he even does it in the film? It's not like he does it again. Film. He literally does it for the 2 seconds.
Dude, is that not exactly what I said last week? Was that not exactly what I said? Thank you so much for showing us pretty much all of Darkseid's, what is likely going to be a very small amount of Darkseid. Thank you for giving it all to us on social media. I really appreciate that. After 4 years of waiting, well worth it to see it on Vero and Instagram. And that was my biggest problem, bro. and I'm not going to go off on a tangent of that because that is my biggest lament. I'm going to comment on that at the end here, but going back to the good things. But that whole scene with that flashback where he sees the possible future, that tied in with the nightmare, Batman's nightmare premonitions and all of these kind of things.
Yeah, it was showing us the nightmare verse.
Yes, it really did such a good job of painting a picture of what was to come, right? That's another thing that I wish we had not known was the appearance of Desaad in the film, the appearance of Granny Goodness, both of which also got spoiled and leaked. Not leaked, they were spoiled.
In the trailer,
intentionally.
Yeah.
But we knew that they were going to be there, but they were, Desaad specifically was such a cool aspect of the film. Especially, through, his interactions with Steppenwolf, which also, again, this is another major elaboration that was totally gutted out of the first film. And I know that you probably felt the same way. Steppenwolf's story arc, bro, it was so much let me just say this again, because the first film, there was no story arc. He just kind of showed up, wanted the mother boxes, and they fought him. That was it.
He was seeking redemption. He had a purpose. He was seeking redemption. He wanted to prove to Darkseid.
This elaborates on his purpose. He actually became something of a sympathetic figure to some degree.
I will say, though, his story was good, but he's one of my gripes in the sense of his design. I did not like freaking Steppenwolf's design. I was not for it. I'm not. It was too Michael Bay Transformers for me, like with the constant sharp parts and the metal moving, and I'm like, sharp and shiny doesn't mean cool. But that's me.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna disagree with you there. I actually loved Steppenwolf's design.
Did you?
I loved his suit. The way his suit was, it almost looked like it was an intelligent entity of its own, like it was sentient. So like when he was bowing to Darkseid, how it automatically like came down, like it was somehow connected to him.
And it broke off the arrows earlier in the film too, like when he flexed.
Yeah, and it was the way that the metal moved, and it was like a part of it was almost like a weapon of its own that he was able to fight with.
Yeah, but I think I'm just so stuck on like, I guess the comics, what I know, because Desaad he's more of humanoid in the comics, right? He's got like different colored skin and stuff depending on what iteration.
Sure,
but he's just more like a Greek god, Hercules type guy, and here it was just like, I don't know, it was so like alien. I feel like he almost looked like a Ninja Turtle to me, where like with the live action Ninja Turtles, where Hollywood just has like this design, and they're like, yeah, we're just gonna keep doing different variations of that, and I'm like,
right,
you know what I mean? Where it's like, okay. He looked like a Michael Bay, which is funny. Michael Bay also produced one of the Ninja Turtle movies too, so I guess it all falls in the line.
Yeah, he did.
A live action Ninja Turtle Transformer thing, but his character and motivation was great. I just wasn't the biggest fan on his look.
Yeah, see, for me, I was fine with it. I get what you're saying as far as like him being more alien and monstrous.
Because when he took that armor off, were you like, how his eyes were like super far apart? So like, E.T., is that you? E.T.? E.T.'s working out, bro.
No, I didn't think. No, I did not think of it, but now that's all I'm going to be able to see. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. But I actually thought Steppenwolf looked dope. And this iteration of Steppenwolf versus what they did with him in the 202017 version.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm just going to say it again. This was the better version.
He didn't have the chin tentacles.
I like this one way more.
They ditched the chin. They ditched the chin tentacles on this version, which was good.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, but the bigger point is like you got to see his overall story arc. The fact that he was seeking redemption from Darkseid, and why they talked about that a little bit, and why he was pursuing these mother boxes, and what he was hoping to get out of it, and just the whole thing, how Darkseid was coming to Earth, why he was coming to Earth, how just the whole sequence of events that set this chain in motion. Right, that of leading us to this nightmare, scenario, and Darkseid coming to Earth to kind of destroy it, and why? We now know that it's all about the anti-life equation. Like all of this stuff, well, again, you have to throw in the caveat. We knew that because of freaking Snyder. None of this was a surprise, sadly, but we got to see it.
Well, it's also too like,
film.
why else is Darkseid? The Darkseid's basically only going from world to world for one thing ever. It's always the anti-life equation. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
I just can't.
But they didn't add any of that in the first film.
No.
It was just like all this very ambiguous, like random crap. At least the way it was presented. And now at least we see the full fleshed out story, and it all just made it more coherent and just more entertaining.
It's so weird going back to like, it's like, why was Darkseid even, I mean, not Darkseid, why was Steppenwolf even a villain in the Whedon cut of Justice League? Like,
exactly.
He literally shows up and gets some other boxes, and you're like, but why? Okay, because power, I guess. That's it. Okay, like,
and
like
we had no reason.
That's what I'm saying.
That was
there was no
the other thing,
motivation really besides they're powerful.
Yeah. And we left that movie. Remember, we talked about it all the way back in 2017. We were like, I had no reason to like really feel nervous or scared of him as a villain. Like everything was just so quick and thrown together that you were just like, you didn't care. You were like, none of this really matters much. Okay, he's a big villain and he beats people up, so I guess they have to battle him. But why and why does this villain matter in any way, shape, or form? And Snyder's cut of the film explains all of that. Like it should have in the first place.
It's so crazy. It's so crazy that they gutted like the story aspects of a movie. And it's like you kind of need the story to see where these characters are going, because if you don't care or know where the characters are going, why are you going to like the movie or, again, care about the characters? You know what I mean? It's like the weirdest.
Exactly.
It's like, I don't even know. Again.
Like Cyborg, right?
Which he was the biggest. That's the craziest thing to me, like how little, or at least, how little he was in the first film, especially in the sense of character development. Yep. He just showed up. Mm-hmm. You were like, oh, he became a cyborg because he got into an accident, which you briefly showed in BVS via that computer clip. And then he just feels like a misfit, so now he's going to join the Justice League. Like it was just so quick, where this, again, he was like the heart of this film, really. Without him, they wouldn't do any of this, but also like it was so much better. So much better.
And now we see why Ray Fisher was so pissed.
Because this literally
why he was so bent out of shape.
His character was like, without you take him out of this movie, that you don't have a movie really, right? So it's nuts.
Yep. That's probably why he clashed and why he was butting heads with them and the Warner Brothers brass and the people behind the gutting of the film. That's probably why because his entire character was butchered. His entire story arc.
For sure.
And everything, him being such a central part of the story was totally gutted out of the film.
So weird.
And all of these actors and stuff like that, when they get into these films, and they're told like, hey, this is your story arc. They get onto projects because of the story of the character that they're taking on. And that probably really ticked it. Well, not probably. That obviously really ticked him off, and rightly so. And congratulations to him for everybody getting to finally see his full performance. It was great.
He did a really good job at Cyborg.
He did a very good job.
I liked him a lot.
He did a really good job.
Yeah.
And it was it's a really meaningful character with a great story arc. And by the end, you really like and appreciate the character and his abilities in a way that they just, you were not able to fully appreciate after the 2017 version.
When he starts going to war and he has those extra arms come out of his back. How cool was that?
Dude,
those things were dope. I was like, that's so cool.
How about that scene where he dives down in between the buildings?
Yes.
And those freaking, I don't even know what they call those blasters come
His
out.
Cannons.
He just butchers like half the freaking city.
Just lays waste to the buildings. It was insane. That whole...
And thank God, man, they freaking explained that whole weird side story of the Russian family that's stuck in that city, that abandoned city.
Yes.
Thank God they removed that whole thing, and it was like, yes, thank you, Zack Snyder, for having like some common sense and saying, oh, this is an abandoned town because it was have a nuclear fallout.
You didn't want Flash rescuing that family and bringing them to safety. What are you talking about?
Dude.
But that's another thing. Speaking of Flash, like how freaking, because they hinted to it earlier in the film where he's like talks about the Speed Force and how like he could do this thing or this thing, right? And then at the end, because basically what happens is he runs out of time, and you think Darkseid wins, and I was like, they're gonna pull Infinity War. They're gonna pull a freaking Infinity War. It's gonna end, and we don't even know if we're getting a sequel. Like that's like at least with Infinity War, we knew the following year Endgame's coming out. We didn't even know. We don't even know if it's gonna happen. So I was like, no freaking way. But then Flash being the Flash, she's like, all right, Barry, I gotta break my one rule, and basically goes back in time. You see this awesome sequence of him running, goes back in time just a few seconds, so he's able to touch Cyborg and give him that current to release the mother boxes from one another. And it was the coolest thing. Now, I will say, this kind of, while I'm talking about him, this kind of leads into one of my gripes, but as much as I love that moment, the running, the way Ezra Miller runs in this is kind of like the
I'm with you.
The weird hand wrist thing, like he's swiping the air backward. I don't know. It's just like, what? So
it's almost like it looks like he's throwing a frisbee.
Yeah, it's really weird. So that
with every stride, he looks like he's throwing another frisbee.
So that threw me off a little bit. That's like one of my gripes, but I guess it's minor. Apparently, the director of the solo Flash movie said he's going to change the way Flash runs because it was such a big deal by fans that he made a statement. He's like, yeah, he's going to be running differently in the solo Flash movie.
That would be great. That might be one of those things, though, where Zack Snyder allowed the actor to kind of make the character his own, and how do you think Flash should run, that sort of thing. I'd be interested to know where that came from.
Right, like it just Ezra Miller was
that was like choreographed. Yeah,
he's throwing his stank on it.
If it was, yeah, exactly. But yeah, because it is not my favorite either. But that scene
was dope
at the end where he reverses time.
But it also alludes to, like, because you see him in the Nightmareverse in that Flash armor, right, or whatever it is. It's like, so is he gonna because he came back, because we see him in BVS come back to the I guess, like that Flash of the Nightmareverse.
Am I too soon?
Yeah, he comes back to the Bruce Wayne and say, am I too soon? So is like, are they gonna play with him trying to alter the Nightmareverse? Because he literally came back to Bruce to warn him, but it didn't. But him warning him still didn't work. So it's like, are they gonna mention that? Like, are we gonna see that? Be like, dude, I went back to you to tell you, like, she's the key. You were right about him. You know what I mean? Like, save Lois at all costs, or he's gonna go crazy. Like,
yeah.
So
well, it's interesting because we don't know. We know we're getting the Flashpoint movie. So, and in Snyder's cut of the film, they allude several times, Barry speaking to himself and even mentioning it to the other Justice League members, that, he has a rule of not going at certain speeds because weird things happen to time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So he's aware of the fact that he can, at certain speeds, he begins to manipulate time, and he does it. He kind of alludes that he doesn't really know how to control it, or you never know what could happen. So it's going to be interesting to see how they tie that in as they roll this out, and hopefully, again, we get a Justice League. I'll say when. I'm just going to say that. Just say when we get a Justice League 2. How are they going to tie this in with that aspect of it? Because Zack Snyder clearly already accounted for it playing a role in Justice League 2 and 3.
Yes. Yeah. I think there's going to be lots of changes in the Flashpoint movie too. Because I think another thing they're changing is the color of Flash's lightning. Because that was another gripe. Mm-hmm. Everyone was like, Flash's lightning is supposed to be yellow or gold, right? And not blue. So I'm curious to see why that changes. Maybe they'll explain it to, like, where he's connected deeper into the Speed Force, or he's even faster now, so because we did an episode on that where, like, depending on how fast you're moving, it creates different shades of light, right? So maybe they'll play with that whole thing,
right.
Where maybe because of how fast he's going, it's blue or it's yellow. It just really depends. So that'd be really, really interesting. Although, if memory serves me correctly, from the DC Fandom art we got in 2020, the concept art of his new Flash costume had yellow lightning coming off of it, right? Do I remember that correctly? Yeah. So it looks like they will be changing that, which is,
I believe so anyway.
You know what? Let me we posted it on our Instagram. I want to see before I say that. Like, no, Harris, you're wrong. It's not. We posted that a while ago. Let's see. Yes, yellow for sure, and he's right in front of Michael Keaton Batman in the concept art. So good, but it's crazy. It's multiple colors too. It's also, there's shades of, like, purple in there as well. I'm really curious to see what they're going to do. That's very
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think? Do you think that because this is one of my big curiosities, and we've already said it a couple times here, but do you think that after the release of this film, do you think that this is going to influence the remainder of the films that are coming out that were already, tied to the Snyderverse?
I have no idea. The Warner Brothers just, I feel like, they're just throwing darts at boards and seeing one.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It does. It absolutely right.
But
yes.
like at the same time, if the past says anything, they're clearly motivated by what they think the fans want in the sense of where they think they're going to find the money. And so fans are very vocal that they want this. They're just going to do it because they're like, oh, that means it'll sell. So maybe. I don't know. I don't know because especially with the Flash movie, like they've already casted like Supergirl and stuff like that, but they haven't started filming. So maybe they might go to the director and writers and be like, "Hey, we need you to do this, add this scene, intertwine this somehow." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm very
because again, if you're gonna do Flashpoint, man, that directly impacts
it's
anything that they're doing. I mean, again, if you're going to say that they're tied together, which how do you not? If you make a Justice League 2 and you've got the Flash running around doing a Flashpoint movie and it's the same exact Flash.
But Ben Affleck Batman and Ezra Miller Flash are already in it. So it's like that automatically makes it tied to like the Snyderverse, right? So you would assume, you would think and hope that they already knew this going, because obviously they saw the Snyder Cut and knew what the story was years ago, right? Like they knew. So you would hope, knowing that they had the Snyder Cut coming out, knowing that like it's the same actors, they would tie it in some way where it could at least go both ways, right? Where you could at least be like, okay, this is going to mean this, but it doesn't necessarily have to, right? And with the multiverse, that's exactly what you're doing. Like you could just explain it by being like, no, it's an alternate timeline. So hopefully that's what that does. Because that's the reason why I wanted Flashpoint. Because I'm like, yeah, it's a cop out in a sense where like you could default to explain any change by the time stream being messed up or the multiverse. So,
well, my whole thing with the Flashpoint was the reason I wanted Flashpoint is because they had made such a mess of the whole doggone thing. They had so butchered the entire DC cinematic universe and world that it was like, you need a Flashpoint just so you can clean this mess up. Mm-hmm. It was basically our version of it.
Now you're like, crisis. Wait, if you go down this route, we don't necessarily need a Flashpoint.
Yeah. So it's like, well, now if you're going to reintegrate that, if you're going to reintegrate Zack Snyder's stories and let him finish out this story arc, and you still currently are utilizing and have his Wonder Woman, his Aquaman, his Flash running around, his Superman. I mean, we still don't know what the freak they're doing with Henry Cavill Superman.
Hopefully he's in Black Adam. Please be in Black Adam. Please be in Black Adam.
Yeah, really. Man, we can hope and dream, but there's all kinds of rumors that, he's going to be, first they were talking about that he was going to be making like cameos and all this kind of a thing, but bottom line is we still don't know. But if he is still running around, how do you have that and it not be directly tied in? Because it just gets really kind of, you're really muddying the waters at that point.
But we also know they're introducing Supergirl in the Flashpoint, so it's like, how do you have Supergirl and not Superman? You know what I mean? Yeah. Or at least mention or see a cameo because they're cousins.
At this point, you have to know. Oh, they'll find a way.
But they're cousins, and I would hope or assume they're going to keep them like that in the DCEU, because how else are you going to... Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess you could change it easy enough, but it's like, why would you? Like, that would just make for good storytelling to be like, yeah, they're related, and, she kind of is asking him for help on how to use her powers and stuff like that. Or are they going to introduce her where she's already been Supergirl for a while? Like, I don't know. Or are they pulling her from an alternate universe because it's Flashpoint and it could be, she's from a different timeline. Who knows?
Jeez, man. And again, this is what I meant. This is exactly what I was talking about at the beginning of the podcast when I said this movie it's an epic tragedy, right? And it left me feeling like I was happy for everyone involved. I was happy for all the filmmakers, all the creatives, all the cast, the crew, everybody. And congratulations to Zack Snyder and just everyone involved for finally getting to show their vision. And it was a significantly better film than what we got in 2017. But it left me feeling very frustrated because I was like, everything that's transpired over the last 4 years in the DC cinematic world has been such a hot mess. And now we're just like back to this is like, oh my God, well, we would have had this in 2017, the audience would have been able to say, okay, this is an awesome course. Let's finish this out.
Exactly. That's what I kind of hinted to earlier. I'm like, if we would have got this originally instead of the Whedon cut, I think even the people who didn't like BVS would have forgiven it and been like, all right.
It would have corrected course.
Exactly. Because again, I'm one of the people who I didn't absolutely hate BVS, but I also didn't love it. I thought it had a lot of problems. And so after seeing this, I'd be like, oh, okay, so we're good. You corrected course. That you're in a really cool path, especially with the epilogue, showing how freaking Mirror, Flash, Deathstroke, Batman, and the Joker are like teaming up to try to save the world and stuff like that. I'm like, yes, I want more of this and see this, nightmare verse that could be and how you're going to prevent it. Like, it would have fixed everything. So it's like, it is this weird, like you said, it's like a happy, weird tragedy. Like I don't even know. It's just,
it's a triumphant
It's weird,
tragedy.
Man. It just brings more questions because now, like, we love it. I'm sure most people are going to love it, especially DC fans are going to love it. But it's like,
I'm going to watch it again.
So
it's
am
4
I.
hours long, and
Dude.
I'm going to watch it again. So that should tell you right there.
So am I. Isn't it weird how it felt like an epic, right? Like a big,
It did.
huge, like just the tone of that movie. It had that, like, that Lord of the Rings or Infinity War, like heaviness, like a lot's at stake here. This big, huge world. And I was like, this is great. Like, this is the feeling I wanted. And again, it's so crazy that how a score, just letting the director tell his story, the grade, all these things combined give you that, which is what made movies like Endgame, Infinity War, the Lord of the Rings trilogy so successful. So it's like, it's just the meddling. It's like because the thing that's annoying is like, they hired him. They're the ones who said, okay, you could do this.
Exactly.
How are you going to hire someone, accept their pitch and vision, be like, all right, this is your vision. Yes, fine, go with it. And then be like, no. It's like, then why did you hire him? You knew what his vision is. You hired him because he pitched to you what he wanted to do. You said, yes, here's $200 million, do it. And then change it.
Yep.
Like, how? I don't get that. That makes no sense.
And even worse than that, you set the fans out on a course of a massive fan base that goes back decades. People grew up on these characters, these stories. You set the fan base out on this huge story arc, and then you just blow the whole thing up. Half the people were happy, half the people were upset. And, either way, you were telling everybody, okay, we're moving away from this, we're moving in a different direction. But then you never, in 4 years, you never solidify a new direction, and you never really clean anything up. You just kind of start throwing crap against the wall to see what fixes. And now 4 years later, you release the original vision of this Justice League film that would have, at that time, course corrected a lot of the things that people were unhappy with in BVS and would have set the whole thing right. And this whole thing we'd be 4 years down the road of this course. Who knows like what movies we would have gotten by now?
Dude.
Who knows? I mean, we kind of do know because they announced them.
Yeah, we would have had a Nightwing movie. Batgirl would have been out by now. All that stuff.
Wonder Woman 2 would have been a completely different film.
Jeez.
Completely different film. Because the whole reason that Wonder Woman 2 was the way it was because they had no idea what direction anything was going. So they just wrote just kind of this self-contained, unimportant film.
It's in the past. Yeah. It's or freaking Birds of Prey. Like, what would have happened? Because the Birds of Prey was originally supposed to be, before it turned into Birds of Prey, if memory serves me correctly, because there's been so many changes, it was supposed to be a Mad Love movie, like a freaking that explores Joker and Harley's relationship. But then it got twisted. So it's like, man, all this stuff that we were like super excited about and could have been, because that's another one of the movies that wasn't received too well, right? Like when you think of movies in the DCEU that are like, on the bottom of the totem pole, it's Suicide Squad, the first one, Birds of Prey, and now, unfortunately, I would put Wonder Woman 84 in there, like, which it hurts me to say it, but I can't be biased because, again, the first Wonder Woman movie I love so much, and I had such high hopes for the second one because it was the same cast, the same director. I'm like, oh, this movie's gonna be great, but to my dismay, I did not think it was great. So, it's crazy. But we got a little bit of redemption in seeing Wonder Woman back at peak awesomeness in Justice League, the Snyder Cut.
Oh, dude.
So
that she was awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Snyder's version of Wonder Woman in this film was absolutely awesome. In fact, just the Amazons as a whole.
Yes.
Just so good. And, again, kind of like what you were alluding to, like if they had released this film, right, it wouldn't have fixed the Suicide Squad movie. Like, a lot of the other things that you just mentioned, like it wouldn't have fixed everything. Mm-hmm. But in the big picture, like the Avengers versions of these films, right, the Justice League version, the course would have been on a much different footing. And the fact that now here we are 4 years later and we're still talking about whether or not we're going to continue to pursue this footing is just really frustrating as a fan.
It is.
It's really frustrating. And so it's like, again, it just go back to, it left me very happy and frustrated at the same time. And in the end, and I have to mention this before we start to wrap up here. The one thing that I just said out loud when the movie was ending, I just shook my head. I just said, I freaking knew it. I was very, very frustrated by the fact that Zack Snyder spoiled almost this entire film before it released. And there was a lot more stuff that they released that because I stopped paying attention.
Oh no, you want me to tell you the list? Okay, so these are the ones. Remember a few podcasts back where I told you and everyone listening that there was a spoiler that he released or a clip they released.
Oh yeah, what was that?
I was really mad. The fact that in the Nightmareverse, Deathstroke teamed up with Batman and gang. So I knew. So while for many people, where like we saw Deathstroke towards the end of the movie, where again it was a different version of the Whedon cut where he goes to Lex and he gives him Bruce's name and he's like, yeah, we're gonna fight up, setting up for that future solo Batman movie. But we didn't know that he was in the Nightmareverse. We didn't know. We knew it was in the movie because Snyder said it.
I saw that picture.
Yes,
I saw
but you didn't know where it fit.
But I didn't know where
exactly.
it fell.
And I knew that literally he said, yeah, in the movie in the Nightmare universe, Deathstroke teams up with Batman and stuff. And I'm like, why would you say that?
God.
Why would you like? And it's one of these, and it was one of these things where like it blindsided me because I was just reading an article. I should have freaking knew better. I should have freaking known not to read anything Snyder said that close to the release. But it's like, but I read it and I'm like, dude, like. That would have been cool to be like, what? Like, freaking Snyder, Deathstroke was working with Batman in this version. Like, it would have been cool, to not know that he was working with Joker in this freaking Nightmareverse, which he spoiled.
Yes,
like we all knew.
Absolutely.
I think that would have been an even bigger one, but he released pictures and told everyone that off the bat. Heck, the freaking costume is in Dallas right now for 2 months at an exhibit.
Unbelievable.
So it's like, come on, man. Like, that would have been awesome.
And for me, that one is even worse.
Yeah, the Joker one for sure.
The Joker scenes, because they shot those scenes. Those were additionally added scenes
was part of that
they shot for this cut. For the release of this film. It wasn't like that was shot 4 years ago. They just shot this. They just added these scenes to the film.
Literally like 8 months ago they shot that, yeah.
Yeah, they just did it. And instead of letting it be a surprise at the end of the film, he spoiled it in multiple ways. And it's not that big of a scene, by the way. You don't see the Joker and Batman go back and forth for long. It's short. So the fact that that was spoiled before the film came out, it's just ridiculous. So and you had some people like commenting to us on both on social media and on the channels, saying things like, "Oh, you guys are naive. This is Warner Brothers marketing." No, it is not. This was Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder had full control over this thing. They gave him full control. If he didn't want it released, it wouldn't have been released.
He forfeited his salary to have full control.
Exactly right. The only way he was coming on board to do this is if this was his way or the highway. This was all Zack Snyder. And almost all of the spoilers that came out all came from him on his personal social media. So don't tell me that this was Warner Brothers and their marketing team. This was not Warner Brothers and their marketing team. This was Zack Snyder. The leaks and the spoilers were Zack Snyder. And that is that is the second frustration about this is like, there's a lot of people. And look, I admit I was not on team release the Snyder Cut. Neither you or I were. We were exhausted by the whole thing. And I stand by that to this day. Like it got to the point where it was just crazy. But it was, to where you, and I say, what I mean by that is you couldn't say anything without getting attacked by someone from the Release the Snyder Cut group.
Yeah, it wasn't like we didn't want to see it. It was just like,
yes, exactly.
We didn't think it was going to happen. It was just really, I don't know. It was just one of those things.
It just became really tribal, and it just became like really over, just like everything on social media now. It just became aggressive and tribal, and it just became one of these frustrating things where it's just like, look, guys, either they're going to do it or they're not, but let's move on, and can we just act like civil human beings? That's really what it boiled down to for me. So I was on the Release the Snyder Cut train in the sense of I hoped that it happened for him.
Sure. Like we wanted to see it. Why wouldn't you want to see it? We said that several times.
We wanted to see it.
Yeah.
But we were not on this like, hey, we're going to raise money and put up billboards and all this kind of thing. It's like, yeah, we want to see it. Is there like some kind of a poll that we can sign? Sure. I would like to see that, Warner Brothers. Put that out. But nothing crazy. But, there was a lot of people that worked really hard to help him get this out.
Raise lots of money.
To put the pressure on Warner Brothers, raise lots of money. Yeah, exactly. Huge campaigns. And all those people that did that, their payoff was to see this film and have that experience of being able to be surprised by the moments we didn't get to see, to get to enjoy the film in its full context when it came out. But instead of marketing it in a normal way where it's like he teased little things here and there, but left the majority of it unspoiled, which is what studios and filmmakers and storytellers typically do in these situations, he just laid the whole thing out. And again, I'm giving him the stuff that he talked about before they announced that they were going to actually release it. Because he didn't know. He didn't know
it was ever going to come to fruition. So he was just like telling people.
So I am totally forgiving of all of that. So that I'm not
like the concept art of Martian Manhunter and the storyboards.
Yes, I'm totally forgiving of that. I understand completely why he did it then. I'm talking about everything he released after that, right? Everything that he released after that.
You didn't want to know about the War Machine,
they were gonna do it?
Batman tank from Batman Returns, the new Joker costume.
Yep.
Deathstroke, all that stuff.
And it was just so unnecessary. Like he should have said to himself, I've already told them pretty much almost everything. I've already told them so much. I've already shown them concept art for so much. The little bit that I haven't, I'm not going to show. I'm going to hold that back so that they can really enjoy this for what it was intended to be.
I just imagine him just being super excited and wanting to give, because he said it, he is so grateful to the fans who made it happen and stuff like that. So I feel like he owed them something. He just wanted to let them know, you know what I mean? So it's like this weird, like, I agree with what you're saying, but it's like, I can only, because this film has had to meant so much to him, because especially with everything that happened to his daughter, and that's the reason kind of all this started. So this probably means more to him than anything he's ever made. So I can kind of see like where it's different in a sense. I don't know. It's like I'm trying to play both sides where it's like, yeah, I agree. I don't want to be spoiled for me, but it's like, because I will say, like, while I really like this movie and I could probably come to love it after a second and third viewing, I just don't want to cement that yet because I've only seen it once, but I see that possibly happening. There's like, I wouldn't say I'm like that Snyder diehard that literally what he says is like word. You know what I mean?
No.
But for those people, they're the type of like diehard fans, which more power to them. They want that stuff. So maybe he's just playing to his audience, the people who got it made. If
so, I think he read the room wrong, because I do. Because
I'm telling you, there's lots of people who love stuff like seeing that stuff.
There are, but I really believe they're the minority, especially when it got to a certain point. We were seeing a lot. I was seeing a lot. In fact, as we were talking about, the vast majority of people that were commenting and responding to us, unlike before when we were talking about the Release the Snyder Cut before it actually happened, this time it was just like, yeah, he's really wearing me out.
Hey, I'm right there with you and everyone else, but to To each his own, I say.
So I think that he, for me, it was really boiled down to, I just don't think he was in release the Snyder Cut mode for so long that I just don't think that he knew how to shift gears and change it.
These are the best pictures. I have the best
this is
storyboards.
The most fantastic.
There's not a better cut
film
of a
ever
cut
made.
ever
I've got
cut.
the greatest concept art you've ever seen.
Yeah, so he went
Super
to full blown.
heroes.
Yeah, man, he just never left that release the Snyder Cut mode, and that was unfortunate. It was really unfortunate. By the time we got to see the film, I knew almost everything that we were going to see, and I didn't see as much as you did.
No, yeah.
So you really knew
The Martian
what
Man.
was
I think
coming.
the Martian Manhunter bit with the someone like showing her red eyes. I forget where I saw it. It was like a still or a spot, and then obviously
That's just
and then the
unfortunate.
Deathstroke one, because the Deathstroke one, that one would have been cool. And even the Joker one, even though everyone knew that, because that was like a big announcement that went out where, I mean, it was in the freaking at the end of the trailer. At least the dialogue he used for his Snyder Cut trailer with the Joker wasn't the same that we saw in the epilogue in the movie. Like, it was completely different. They didn't use that line at all in his Snyder Cut.
Right.
So at least that was good. At least it was, different. But it's like, you knew that he was in the Nightmare verse with Batman. And it's like, come on, that would have been like, what better big reveal, especially at the end of the movie, than saying, hey, DC fans, in this Nightmare future, Batman teams up with the Joker. That's like dropping a mic. Like, you know what I mean? That's like, that is a mic drop moment. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Batman's teaming up with the Joker? Like, and especially after the
Freaking
conversation
crazy.
they had, because that epilogue, I'm a massive Batman fan. Like many people, that is easily top 3 scenes in the whole entire film for me. Like, when I think of the movie, like off the top, again, I've only seen it once, so not, I want to watch it again, stuff like that. But right now, this moment in time would be obviously the Superman when he gets brought back to life and he's fighting the Justice League, the stuff on Themyscira at the beginning of the movie, and then the epilogue at the end. Because that back and forth with freaking Batman and the Joker was brilliant. Like, was really freaking brilliant. And I wanted to ask you this because I know how you feel about Jared Leto Joker. I know you've been very vocal that no bueno when it comes to Jared Leto Joker. But what did you think of Snyder's version of the Joker within this universe? He's got no tattoos, and more importantly, he was acting a little different. I mean, it's kind of the same, but not. He tamed him like he did with a lot of the characters and stuff. He was able to wrangle. So what did you think of the Jared Leto Joker in this film? Before I give you my thoughts, I want to know yours.
I would say it's still my least favorite version of the Joker, but significantly improved.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So they roped in a lot of his more exaggerated, over the top elements of his performance.
Please.
They roped that in, and they made him more of a dark, like angry version of Jared Leto's
which
Joker,
is what I like.
Which worked.
Yes,
it worked perfectly in the scenario. And his back and forth with Batman, the writing in that scene was really, really good. I mean, you felt tense,
dude. Yes,
watching it because you didn't know, like, you felt at any moment like they were gonna go head to head. So it was really well done, really. So I would say it's still my least favorite version, like especially the laugh. His version of the Joker's laugh is it's like nails on a chalkboard.
It's kind of muted, right? It's like not loud.
It's just weird,
it's like,
and it's just not, again, that's just my taste. It's not, some people may love it. It's just not my cup of tea. It's my least favorite version of the Joker. But without question, this was a much improved version of Jared Leto's
I think that's
Joker.
my sentiment as well for the most part. Like, overall, like, I don't think he compares to Joaquin Phoenix or Heath Ledger, right? Like, I don't think he's on that par. But at the same time, way better. And I think his version of the Joker works really well in this universe. Like, if it's that for like the entirety of like Justice League 2 or whatever, I think that'll play very well with Ben Affleck Batman.
I'm just so worried about the idea of bringing him and turning Jared Leto loose in a full film.
I'm curious.
As the Joker.
I mean,
I just don't know if you can wrangle him for a full film.
based on this scene alone, that's all we could base it off of. Based on this scene,
Yes, that's true. That's true.
I want to see more. Like that's because like after this scene, after that little interaction, did you want to see more of them? Because I did. I want to see more of both of them.
Yeah, well, yeah, I will definitely give you that. I would be concerned. That would be one of my bigger concerns going in. But yes, I agree with you. After seeing that, if they can maintain that,
they got rid of the tattoos and everything too. I'm like, yes, no more damage on your forehead.
I would absolutely, yeah. If they can maintain that, I would be down to see how that plays out for sure.
But dude,
for sure.
The biggest moment, like for me, because the whole back and forth is, like you said, really, really intense. And Batman basically gets to the point. He's like, because Joker's being Joker. What does he do? He pokes at Batman all the time. He's basically like saying, "Oh, you would know about loss, wouldn't you? About your mother, your father, your adopted son." And he's like poking at him. And then Batman's like, choose your next words very carefully. And then, but Joker, don't care. He keeps going, right? Keeps going and going and going. Yeah. And to the point where at the very end of the conversation, Batman's like, make no mistake, I will kill you by the time this is over. And it's like, oh my, like, because that's the whole, for any Batman.
But he's also simultaneously like digging into him by saying, when Harley Quinn was dying in my arms.
Yes. But the Joker doesn't care.
Gurgling in her own blood.
But it's so funny.
And he's just like, you're going to turn my screws, I'm going to turn yours right back. That was what made it so brilliant. And you saw the Joker start to lose it.
You think so? Because I saw like, he kind of, but not really.
He even says to him, he's like, you almost had me there.
Yeah, I'll give it to you.
It was, and did you see even his hand shaking when he was handing him the card?
Yes, that is true. Yes. Where his hand, yes, because there was a long. There was the long.
Caused him to flip
That was
out.
when there was the long pause, right? And the camera was like really blurry and it wasn't focused. Was that at that moment?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. But either way, just the fact that like, I gotta watch this movie again. It was just so I was in awe of like I was just taking it so much. But the big takeaway for me with that is just like the fact he's poking, and now they're again in this post-apocalyptic future. Batman literally told the Joker to his face, "No, when this is done, I will kill you, and it's gonna be slow." Is what he said. He's like, he's like, it's gonna be slow and it's gonna hurt. So the fact that you're seeing like
crazy,
like the end of this biggest rivalry in comic books, of it, like Batman setting it up, I'm like, oh man. It's like in that scenario, it's like, yes, I want to see you kill him, Batman. Do it.
And Joker even, he basically says, he brings up and he comments on how he basically killed Dick Grayson.
Yeah, no, which again, Snyder teased.
Says it right
Snyder
there.
teased that, which he didn't know. He didn't know this was going to happen, but he said he wanted to explain in the next movie how Joker killed Dick Grayson Batman, because it wasn't Jason Todd like we all assumed. It's actually Dick Grayson, which is a little weird for me. I still don't know how I like that, because it's like, so you're saying no more Nightwing? Like, that's a bummer. Like, why couldn't it have been Red Hood, and that way you could have brought him back, or Jason Todd, and that way you could have brought him back as Red Hood. So curious to see where he was going with that. But again, with all these alternate timelines and stuff, I'm happy, if they can make all this work and not be too crazy with Flashpoint, where we could have our Matt Reeves Batman, because we know that movie's probably going to be freaking amazing. Have this awesome Snyderverse now that we know what his true vision was, and it was going in a really cool direction. I think we can have our cake and eat it too, if they play their cards right. If the
track record is any indication, I'm going to wait and see. I'm
trying to be optimistic here, Tim. I'm on a high. I've seen this awesome movie. Let's be hopeful.
I'm a realist. They have pushed me past optimism.
I'm a realist.
Okay. I am going to wait and see, because as of right now, man, this kicks the curiosity door wide open, right? For pretty much probably everybody. But as of right now, we have no commitments. We have no commitments to anything. So we can speculate and we can say this is going to happen. It's likely, the fans want it, the whole thing. But until we get some kind of confirmation, we freaking don't know, because Warner Brothers has been all over the place with the DC universe, and there is no guarantees for anything. And let's not forget, by the way, at the end of this movie, they also introduced the Atom.
Oh, they did. Well, he was introduced in we saw him in the middle of the movie. You mean the character?
No. Yeah, well, they let us know who he was at the end of the film.
Oh, yeah.
He's in there, and you see him, and he's interacting with Silas Stone, but you don't know who he is until the end of the movie when they introduce him and they say his name.
But that was also spoiled. We knew that. Did you not?
Was it
Yeah, you
really?
didn't know that? Snyder
No.
actually said that before this even got greenlit. That was one of the things that you can't blame him for. So way back when he was saying Martian Manhunter was going to be in it, he also said that Adam was going to be in it as well.
You know, I may have heard it then, and I just forgot.
Okay, that's probably that worked out in your favor.
Yeah, so it did because I blocked out certain things, but most of it I was aware of. But some things I didn't see, and some of it I probably knew and just forgot about. But either way, they introduced him, so it's like, where's he going to come into the picture? Right? There's just so many things.
He's running Star Labs now too.
Yeah, that's right. So there's just so many things that they can do, and so many different directions that they could go and break out. And again, the opportunity there for Warner Brothers from a business perspective to expand to expand on all of these possibilities and these potential, breakouts, as individual, original series on HBO Max, and then elaborate on them further, and then bring everybody together for the big, tentpole films that end up in both the theater and on HBO Max. I mean, the opportunity there to expand your subscriber base and to bring original content that fans actually want to see is huge here. And I just hope that they're able to see that and they actually follow through with it. Again, they may already be talking about all this. This already may be well in the works. I hope so too. But we have no commitments on anything. And until we do, I'm just going to assume that it's not.
Restore the Snyderverse. I'll tell you one thing. This time around, I'm definitely going to get on that hashtag because I want to freaking see that happen. Now that I know that, like, for a fact that if they're pushed hard enough, they'll go through with it. And the fact that I know how much I like the Snyder Cut, I need to see where it's ultimately going to go. So I'm going to start pushing that hashtag now. Restore the Snyderverse.
I will gently and kindly be on board with any hashtags to let's go Justice League 2.
So crazy.
But to kind of wrap things up, because I think we've now elaborated on almost the entire film. Dude. But to wrap things up, what is your favorite additional scene of the film? Oh my
God. Additional scene?
Like something that was in Snyder's cut specifically that was not in the first movie.
Oh my gosh, oh man. That's hard.
Because I already asked you what was your favorite aspect to the overall story, the addition, but what was your favorite scene, your favorite moment?
The Superman stuff was so cool. Like I'm immediately going to the expanded versions of like what we were talking about earlier. When I said I think I even said my 3 favorite parts of the movie off the top of my head right now or currently is the Amazon stuff at the beginning or the Wonder Woman like bank scene. Anything with Superman, but probably right now just because again. I'm a big Batman fan, man. I love that End Nightmare epilogue scene. That was pretty dope.
That's what I think.
I think it's got to be that because I want to see that. I want to see them go head to head so bad. Just like the psychology in that like 7-minute scene was so cool that if we get to see more of that, I think that. But it's hard to choose, man, because again, everything with Superman just soloing Steppenwolf, him with the Justice League, Wonder Woman, even a lot of stuff with. Cyborg was really dope. It's hard, but me and Batman. I'm gonna go with the Batman epilogue scene at the end.
Okay. Yeah. See, when I was watching, I was like, "This is definitely gonna be Arris."
Plus, Deathstroke is there, and Deathstroke is like, "You regret bringing him along now?" He's like, "What do you think?"
Well, you're also such a huge Flash fan, and the Flash was there in this like mech suit. I mean, it was a very cool.
Well, I do want to say before you give me yours, I do want to say my last gripe. The only was the Flash, right? The way he ran, but also like Barry, like the Flash worked in this movie. He did work. It definitely worked. But being the comic book fan and Barry Allen fan that I am, I'm like, yes, it works within this team in this movie, but that is not Barry Allen. Like the way they're playing him up as that jokester and comic relief, that is not Barry Allen at all. So it's almost like they're kind of wanting to like make the Barry Allen Flash character like Bart Allen, where he's more of that younger kid who is the jokester, and stuff like that, speedster.
I felt like they were trying to make him Peter Parker.
Yeah, and that's not Barry Allen. Barry Allen, like, though like a little lighthearted and can crack jokes, that's not really him. His story is more about like the loss, and he's very optimistic. So I don't know. So like again, it works in this movie, but it's not Barry Allen, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So that's a gripe there. I
totally understand. I mean, and we've talked about it again. I already said it once, but I'm not a fan. Or Ezra Miller as Flash was not that was probably one of my least favorite castings. But I was just happy that it was improved in this film because it was dramatically.
That's where
improved.
I was at too, and I'm curious to see in the solo Flash movie if that director will shift his tone and personality more there, or if he'll try to keep it in line. So here's hoping.
And it made me feel optimistic because seeing that, it showed me that had a lot more to do with Josh Whedon's version of the film and the scenes that they used and chose for him than it did Ezra Miller, which is one of the things that made me optimistic because I love Ezra Miller. I think he's great
fantastic
actor.
in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
But yeah, I think he's a great actor, but it's just for me, at least the way they wrote it or whatever, it just didn't fit. But this made me more optimistic, especially because we know we're keeping him for the Flashpoint. So that made me more optimistic leading into that. And
we're going to see him with Batman and Keaton Batman. Oh man, I'm excited. I'm very curious to see where that's going to go.
Well, for me, this is I want to mention this because it's not my favorite scene, but I want to mention this because I just think it's so important and it made such a huge impact on the film as a whole, on the tonal shift between the 2017 Justice League and Snyder's Cut is Junkie XL's composition of the film. His score for this film, it was so well done. And let me tell you something. I am a massive Danny Elfman fan. I love me some Danny Elfman. He was just not the best choice for the Justice League. And that almost hurts coming out of my face because he's the composer for the Batman score that we all know and love. He's the brain trust for that. He's a classic composer, but I just didn't think he was a great fit for the original Justice League. And I think he was kind of in a tough spot, but that's beside the point. The point is Junkie XL killed it. He did such a good job, great. And the score played such a huge role,
massive role
in changing the overall feel and tone of this film. It just cannot go without being said. It was just brilliant. Congratulations to him, and congratulations to Snyder for having the courage and also just the artistic sense to say, no, we're bringing him back and we're changing the score out. Because that's not easy to do, and they did it, and it worked.
It's crazy because Danny Elfman, like you said, one of the greatest composers of all time. I don't think that could be argued at all,
without question.
But also the inventor of the ever famous Batman theme, right? Like the Batman theme.
Yeah,
and he used
the Batman march.
And he used bits of it in the Whedon version of Justice League, and he even brought back elements of the John Williams Superman score.
That's
in
right.
there, but.
Sure did.
As iconic as those beats are, I will say with Snyder's version of the Justice League, Junkie XL infinitely better. Just worked the tone, the feel. It's just one of those things where it just is a perfect fit. You know what I mean? It's like trying to make a circle go into a square hole or something like that. You know what I mean?
Without a doubt. And it was just more. It was a more meaty score. It was darker. It had an edge to it. And it added a level of seriousness that the movie desperately needed.
Which is that Snyder tone.
Yeah, exactly right. And just gave it an intensity. It was just so well done. There was a couple of song choices that I would say one in particular that I just thought was a little weird and out of place for my personal taste, but I'd be nitpicking, so I'm just not even going to point out which one.
Was it the Flash scene?
I'm just going to say there was one, but overall, just excellent, really well done, and I think a critical aspect to the overall Snyder Cut in general. But my favorite scene of the entire film, and this is just going to again speak to just my personal love of the character, is the scene where Superman is remembering who he is, and he's walking through the Kryptonian ship looking at his suits, and you're hearing the voice of his father, of both of his fathers. You're bringing up you hear him listening to the voices or remembering the voices of both of his fathers, both Jonathan Kent and Jor-El, telling him and teaching him and guiding him and just giving him wisdom and encouraging him to be what he was destined to be. I freaking loved
The
that
second
scene.
flight, as it's
I
been
actually
dubbed.
rewound it.
The second flight, because we got that in the Man of Steel, the first flight. So now this is called the second flight.
That's right. Yeah, and it was, man, I loved that scene. Listening to the two father characters,
Jor-El and Jonathan Kent. Yeah.
Jor-El and Jonathan Kent, just speaking to him and him remembering as he chose the suit that he was going to wear, and then seeing him emerge in the black suit. That was such a great scene for me.
Very cool.
I loved that scene. I actually rewound it as I was watching it because I loved it.
I rewound the freaking epilogue nightmare scene. That's the one scene I rewound. I'm like, I gotta watch that again.
See, there you go. So that tells you what our favorite scenes were, is which ones we rewound.
Because literally,
Yeah. So
I watched it obviously in my living room on the big TV, and then I brushed my teeth and got in bed. I'm like, no, I need to watch it again. So I went on my iPhone and watched that one scene again. I'm like, I need to hear that again.
It was so good. So, and there were several great moments in the movie. Several really fun scenes, really cool moments. But that was definitely my favorite. And I'm not surprised at all that the Batman Joker scene at the end there was yours, because it was up there on my list.
Plus,
as
the
well.
Nightmare costume is just so freaking cool, man. Like, that Nightmare bat suit is so awesome looking too.
Yeah, it's pretty dope.
Just
pretty dope.
and then when Superman lands at the end, because that's how that ends, dude. It's just like, because the heat vision in his eyes, you're like, oh, what's gonna happen? And now we gotta wait until who knows when to probably like 3 or 4 years before we're gonna see the next Snyder Justice League movie. Jeez.
I mean, if they really want to capitalize on this, they won't wait that long.
I hope you're right. That's what I want. But like you said, I don't know. Who knows?
Because you got to remember, these people are all getting older too, especially Ben Affleck.
Hey man, leave Batfleck alone. Batman doesn't get
Ben,
old.
I love you, buddy. I love Ben Affleck, but he's in his 50s,
he's
man.
getting old.
So it's like, if you're gonna play Batman, you got to keep in mind that some of these characters are getting older.
The cowl covers the grays, man.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, and he's in fantastic shape. He's in fantastic shape.
I think this is the longest podcast we've ever done, which rightfully so, because we're talking about a 4-hour movie.
It's up there.
But I think we're going to be just under 2.5 hours, which is crazy.
But I mean, is it surprising? We've only been waiting for this movie for 4 freaking
not at
years.
all. I'm actually quite happy about it, because a lot of the times we don't get to say everything we want to say. But I think actually, funny enough, that's still going to happen, because I guarantee you I'm going to be driving home or something later. I'm be like, dang it, I should have brought that up. I forgot about that scene. You know what I mean? But I'm sure this will not be the last time the Snyder Cut gets brought up on the podcast. So
no,
there's that.
There's zero chance of that. Absolutely zero chance, because we're both going to watch it again.
For sure. I actually asked my wife, I'm like, so do you want to watch it? We could split it up. You do 2 hours tonight and 2 hours tomorrow night.
Good luck with that. Good luck with that, my friend.
I don't know. I think I could be able to do it. So for everyone listening, like, she's not the biggest superhero fan. So we'll see. Well, to be fair, she likes superheroes, but she just told me the other day on the car ride, we were talking. She's like, yeah, I'm a way bigger fan of Marvel than DC. Because I was asking her, like, have you seen the original Justice League? Because we were talking about the Snyder Cut and how it was coming out in a few days. And she's like, no. She goes, I don't like DC characters that much. She goes, I like Batman, but I like more of the Marvel characters. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, okay, all right,
man.
All right.
Amber throwing down the
for
gauntlet.
real. I'm like, okay, all right, whatever. Marvel does have awesome heroes, but you're saying some stuff not like in the Flash and Superman over here.
and for you, man, that's like serious. That's
at least she likes
right
Batman.
there. How much longer do you think you guys will be married?
Well, at least she softened a little bit. She's like, I like Batman and Joker a lot, but so
okay. That saved your marriage right there.
That is, because everyone, if you don't like Batman, then I don't know, man. We're fighting over the kids at that point.
Oh, man.
But on that note, Tim, I think we have ranted and raved for long enough.
Listen, this was 4 years in the making. I think that everybody was long awaited, and now we have done our bit. Hashtag Snyder Cut released.
On to watch it a second and third time.
Here we go.
All right, guys. We'll see you next time when we talk about all things comics.